meeting, and I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. If you could all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, it looks like we thought we were going to have, and now we do have a full contingent of the planning board. We have all 7 voting members here. Welcome, Jody. And we have both of our alternate members here in case we need them. But we're always glad to have you at the meetings anyway. So let's start with the one public hearing that we have for tonight. This will be the 21 Westage Radiology Center amendment to site development plan at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as possible. Applicant seeks to amend the existing site development plan for the conversion of the existing 5,618 square foot Ruby Tuesday building to a radiology center, constructing a 1,848 square foot expansion on the east side and a 933 square foot expansion on the west side of the building to accommodate radiology equipment. The parcel is located at 21 Westage Drive and consists of 1.68 acres in the PSC Planned Shopping Center zoning district. Could we have a motion to open this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Anthony moves it and Felix seconds it. Any further discussion on that?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. So, do we have the applicant here? All right, why don't you come on up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome again. And since we're going to see if there's anyone from the public to speak in a second, and we have those at home watching, if you could just give a quick overview of the proposal before we invite the public to speak.
Sure, although, Mr. Chairman, I think you did a good job already, as I was reading my notes. It is the former Ruby Tuesday restaurant. It's a 1.6 acre parcel at 21 Westage Drive within the Westage development. We're converting that restaurant to a medical radiology center, which is a permitted use in the PSC zone. And this building is specific to the treatment of prostate cancer. That's its main focus. The restaurant's existing 5,618 square feet. We're expanding by 1,848 square feet to a total of 8,399. Has public water and sewer, both of which will be used at a lower rate than the prior restaurant, so it's actually a reduction in use. And we've reworked the elevations that you can see on the screen here to provide a more modern medical look instead of the hospitality look of the restaurant. Most of the site will remain as is. We have some parking improvements, and perhaps most significantly, we're refreshing both the landscaping and lighting on site again to make it an attractive, modern medical facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, if we could, I'd like to see a show of hands from the audience to see if anyone wants to speak to this public hearing tonight.
Nothing on my side.
Don't see anything. Don't see anybody looking. So we will not have to go through the rules for public hearings. Just give one more second to see if anybody comes in, but I don't think that's going to happen. So at this point, I will ask our attorney if it would be appropriate to close the public hearing since nobody showed up.
I think you know the answer to that.
No, surprise me.
But yes, you should close the public hearing. There's been a full and fair opportunity for people to comment on this project.
Thank you. All right. So can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Bob seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that public hearing is closed. But we're going to continue, actually right away, with the project review for the same project, 21 Westage Radiology Center, amendment to site development plan. The board is to review and consider a draft resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval. So I think what we'll do is go right to Dominic and ask you to summarize the draft resolution that you prepared for this.
Happily. So what you should have in front of you that was circulated was draft number 4. It's dated February 5th. This is for an amended site development plan approval. It would be granting both preliminary and conditional final. The standard resolution, which we've been working on developing now with the town for the last 2 years, and I really appreciate everyone's input to get to a point where I think we have fairly standard language now and formats for these resolutions, so I won't go through the entire thing. It obviously restates the history of the project to this point, and it also includes the findings regarding the site plan that the board would make that regarding the location of the site and how it's oriented, and bearing in mind that this is of course an amended site plan approval. It recites also the fact that the application was referred to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, and they responded on December 6th of 2023, recommending that the board rely on its own study of the facts. There are standard conditions now that we've developed. So the first one will be the outside agency approvals are required, and in this case, I don't believe that there are any outside agency approvals required. So we just left it as any approvals identified in the EAF for the project or as otherwise might be required. There is a performance bond that's required. There's a maintenance bond that's required. The amount has been established in consultation with Mr. Bodendorf at $19,500. There is an inspection fee that's required, and that amount, once again with Mr. Bodendorf's review, has been established at $7,500. There are the standard conditions regarding the owner's consent note and the approval block that has to be added to the plans. Requirements that all fees are paid and the escrow deposits are kept. And then standard conditions regarding landscaping and screening and lighting and architectural design and details, which apply for this and every other project. There's also a limitation on amenities and accessory structures. Only that what's shown on the plan can actually be constructed. So adding an additional dumpster that's not shown on the plan or anything like that would trigger the need to come back for an amended site development plan. And this approval would be binding on not only the applicant, but obviously any successors in interest.
Thank you. I think the only thing we need to do is on page 2 in the fourth whereas is to fill in the date on the public hearing that we just closed tonight.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
So add February 8th, 2024 to that. Otherwise, are there any questions or comments from board members?
No.
I mean, I'm not suggesting a change, but I was looking at the bond estimate for this application and the other one that we have for tonight. And I noticed, like, for sidewalk, the price per square foot for one was different from another. Is that perhaps something that this board can look at in the future, just in terms of standardizing those amounts? I'm not suggesting a change necessarily here, but it was something I noticed, and I'm not sure where the appropriate time to say it is. So I was just kind of bringing it up, not necessarily as a comment to the applicant, but general one.
I mean, if the town boards, some municipalities have standard rates that they ask applicants to use. In Fishkill, that's not the case. So if the town board would like to entertain that, we could certainly work with them and come up with something that's more standard. So, but there are going to be discrepancies
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting a change here, but it's just something that I noticed that might not be a bad idea to pursue, and we could talk about that at a different time, but I
Yeah.
thought because we had two tonight, it was appropriate to at least bring it up. I don't want to delay this any further, though.
Yeah, well, Anthony, do us a favor and keep an eye on future ones and see how they look. If you have any thoughts on how we could standardize them, that would be good. Okay. Anything else from board members? All right, seeing as how there are none, could we have a motion to approve and adopt the resolution of
Mr. Chairman, I have one, I'm sorry, I have one
Sure.
question, if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
Right, the performance bond specifically talks about it being a bond. It's a small amount. Is a bank letter of credit acceptable?
I don't know that.
That's a question for the town attorney, and, so, yeah. It does say that the performance bond shall be in a form acceptable to the town attorney.
I'm sorry, that's for the performance bond. The maintenance bond goes to you? Is that the same question?
Building department.
All right, but does I guess the town attorney rules on both?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. All right. So now, can we have a motion to approve and adopt the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for the amended site development plan for 21 Westage Radiology Center as reviewed and revised tonight, and to authorize the chair to sign it?
So moved. I'll second it.
Bob moves it, Fred seconds it. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate the speed with which you process this, and again, thank you.
And
Thank
good
you.
luck with that.
Thank
It's
you.
very important for the town to have something like that, so thank you.
You guys can stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
Oh, I'm going to comment the next public hearing.
Unfortunately, we don't have any other public hearings tonight. So the next item on the agenda is Walmart MFC pickup expansion, amendment to site development plan, board to review and consider a draft EAF Part 2, draft EAF Part 3, draft negative declaration, and a draft resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval. Welcome.
Hi, good evening.
So I was just going to give a little introduction here with, at past meetings on this proposal, there have been discussions about the presence of a 100-year floodplain on the Walmart project site and the need for the applicant to obtain a floodplain development permit from the town. Debbie Colonna has confirmed that due to an apparent oversight, the applicant has not yet submitted the application or required fee for the floodplain development permit, but we understand that you're working on it.
Correct.
So I guess that's not going to hold us up from moving forward with any of the secret documents that we have tonight and the basic resolution of approval.
Okay.
But just wondering what the timing is going to be on getting that floodplain permit application and the fee in.
Yeah, we anticipate that getting to you guys early next week.
All right. Well, as long as we are fairly sure of that, and the submission deadline for February 28th, so
That should be no problem, yep.
that should give plenty of time. So, okay, we'll take that into consideration after we do the resolution. Okay. Do you have anything else to add at this point before we start looking at the secret documents?
Nope, that's all.
All right. So why don't we ask John to review the draft EIFs Parts 2 and 3 and the draft neg deck that CPL prepared.
Sure. The draft EAF Part 2, where you look at the items listed, we didn't identify anything within it that could create a moderate to large impact. So everything was identified as either no or small impact. So if we're all comfortable with that, Part 3, it's just for the town to complete, if they're going to adopt it. And then, do you want me to go right to the neg deck?
Yeah.
Okay.
As there's really not going to be much in there, so why don't we go ahead?
Sure. Okay, as with previous draft neg decks, the first page really just covers the description of the property and the project, and then you get into the reasons for supporting why the board may wish to adopt this neg deck. So on page 2, we listed 3 items. The disturbance of the site is proposed to be located in areas that have been previously disturbed or is existing impervious surface. The proposed action may result in an increase in noise during the construction period, but will return to current levels post-construction. And number 3, the proposed action will not result in any impacts on geological features, flooding, groundwater, air, agricultural, aesthetic, open spaces and recreation, and energy resources, or transportation systems, human health, community plans, or community character. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members?
Quick question.
Go ahead, Bob.
Looking at at any time it changes, but all those Connex and sea containers, are they going to move from there? Or are they going to stay there?
I'm not sure, are those there present day? It's not proposed as part of this application for them to stay there.
I think we had asked that question before, and I think the response was that the trailers would be removed from the site.
I recall that as well.
Yeah. And it would make sense because there's going to be a good bit of the area, well, for the building expansion, first of all, and for the spaces for the parking, which are going to have each of them having their own sign. It's going to take up a good bit of the room of that parking area. So, any other questions? Or Dominic, do you have any questions on this?
No, sir, thank you for asking.
Okay. All right, so let's start with the EAF parts 2 and 3. Is there a motion to approve those for the Walmart MFC pickup expansion as reviewed tonight and to authorize the chair to sign those?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Anthony seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries 7-0. And then we'll move right on to the neg deck. Is there a motion to approve the neg deck for Walmart PFC pickup expansion as reviewed tonight and to authorize the chair to sign that?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Bob seconded that. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. And why don't we move right along to the draft resolution that Dominic prepared, and again, if you could just go over that very briefly.
Sure, thank you. This, what you should have in front of you is draft number 4, dated February 2nd, and just like the last resolution that you just adopted, this is a resolution that would grant both preliminary and conditional final approval for an amended site development plan. The beginning part of it obviously restates the current history of the project. The difference between this resolution and the prior one is that this one, it was subject to seeker. The prior application was a type 2 application, so this has a paragraph regarding that and should indicate today's date on page 2 in the highlighted section for the adoption of the negative declaration. The conditions are standard. There's no outside agency approvals required for this project. A performance bond is required. The inspection fee which has been established by Mr. Bodendorf's review at $7,500 is required. The owner's consent note needs to be signed. The planning board approval block needs to be added to the plans, and the requirement of all fees are paid and escrow deposits are made. Standard conditions regarding maintenance of landscaping and screening and lighting and architectural details. And there's also a limitation on amenities, so only that what is shown on the plans can be constructed. And if there is any modifications to that in the future that are proposed, an amended site development plan would be required. Since the board also adopted a negative declaration, we added a clause that says that strict compliance with the seeker mitigation measures are required. It's a standard condition. And that's it.
Okay. Any questions, comments from board members?
Do we want to add the condition about the floodplain application fee, or?
That's an excellent point, so thank you, Mr. Brozier. What I would suggest is that rather than an actual condition, I suggest an additional bullet, if you will, under the first whereas clauses that says that the application will also require the issuance of a floodplain development permit. And they're going to make that application, and then we could prepare that resolution for next month's meeting if that's what the board would like us to do.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Anthony. Okay. So we have several revisions, just those to clean up everything. So is there a motion to approve and adopt the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for the amended site development plan for Walmart MFC pickup expansion as reviewed and revised tonight, and to authorize the chair to sign it?
So moved.
Anthony moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
I think
Robbie
Robbie was...
Robbie can have it. He can have it.
Yeah. Give Robbie a
Yeah, we'll give Robbie a shot.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. And so, assuming that you can get the floodplain development permit application and fee in before the deadline for the March 14th meeting, I'd like to ask for a motion to authorize Dominic to prepare a draft resolution for the floodplain development permit approval for the Walmart MFC expansion project for the board's consideration at the March 14th meeting. Would someone like to move that?
So moved.
Fred moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
I do have a question. Based
Okay.
on the conditional approval, will the architects be able to submit for a building permit with this, or do we have to wait for that?
Well, yeah, Debbie can answer that too.
You'll
but-
have to call them. They usually will not look at that until you have signed site plans, but you
Okay.
can certainly call that department.
Okay.
I can give you their direct extension. It's 3322.
And of course, any kind of further disturbance or construction on the site would have to be pending approval of the floodplain development permit.
Right.
All right. Well,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks for coming. Okay.
Keep going.
Moving right along. The next project review is Star of Bethlehem Baptist Church Site Development Plan Special Use Permit, or to review and consider the signage submission made by the applicant's representative on January 24th, 2024. So I'll just start off by reminding everyone that the planning board adopted a resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval on January 11th with the condition number 1, that all signed proposals would have to be submitted to the board for review and approval prior to the signing of the site development plan by the planning board chair. So that's what we have in front of us now, is a signed package for the board's consideration. So if you could just briefly describe the signage submission, and then we'll move ahead.
No.
This sign is The structure has been existing on the property for quite some time. We're just putting our name and service times up there. The reason why it just says service times, usually during the summer we start a little earlier. We haven't decided if we're going to do that yet, and so it just has service times there. QR code for they can access our website and more information about our church. It's just a simple sign.
Good, and we did receive a referral response from Mr. Petrus, the town's building inspector, zoning administrator, stating that the sign shown in the rendering would be placed in the already existing monument sign, as you mentioned, which is at the entrance to the property, and that Mr. Petrus has no issue with this sign. So any other questions from board members? Any questions from our consultants?
I don't have any.
Okay. All right, is there a motion? This will just be done by a standard motion. A motion to approve the signage proposal and sign details for Star of Bethlehem Baptist Church as shown in the applicant's submission in fulfillment of condition number 1 in the approved resolution. Would someone like to move that?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Jody
I like your
seconds.
sign.
Thank you.
I got a question.
I like that it says you're welcome here. I think that's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody is
I
welcome
think it's
here.
nice. It's all inclusive.
I got a question. What do you do for us old timers who don't know how to do the QR?
Pardon me?
What do you do for the old timers who can't do the QR coding?
We actually are starting computer classes for the old timers.
There you go. There you go, Fred.
That's one of the ways we give back to the community, and they're open to everybody just to help them get that technology going.
Sounds good.
And meanwhile, we could have Fred take that training, and I'm sure Fred would be glad to stand by the sign.
Oh, he'll be rocking and rolling.
Volunteer.
Hold people's phones near the QR code.
Okay. So we are in the middle of, so this was discussion of the motion. Any further discussion? We have a motion by Felix and a second by Jody. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. So, good work. I think that'll do it.
All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right.
All right, moving on. Let's see if we can get through Basis Industrial as quickly as we got through the other ones. But this will be the Basis Industrial Route 9D, site development plan and special use permit. Forward to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on January 24th, 2024.
Trying to highlight just a few little bits and
Welcome.
pieces.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Lee Lefkowitz from the law firm Zarin and Steinmetz. So you're probably surprised to see me. We've just been retained as counsel in this matter to substitute in for Keenan Bean, the previous counsel. The rest of the team is going to remain consistent. So we're looking forward very much to working with you on this project. And we were actually just retained today. So we've got a lot of getting up to speed to do. And we'll need more time to do that before I can really have a productive meeting with your board on the substance here. But that being said, I did get a chance to take a look at some of the most recent submissions. I do have 2 or 3 procedural items I wanted to clarify and ask about tonight, if that's all right.
Okay, we can do that, and also we could, any of the engineering team who was involved in any of the submissions, we could also certainly hear from them as well.
Sure. So first, I understand that certain protocols weren't followed by a predecessor council, which resulted in their being precluded from speaking with your consultants. And I want to assure you that our firm will continue to adhere to protocol. I know we've been before your board on other applications and are currently before the town on other applications. So I just asked to clarify that we be permitted to speak with your consultants, which we'll need to be able to do to continue to process this application.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention this later, but since you'll probably be talking about a number of things related to process, I was going to mention that the board previously did authorize the applicant team to communicate directly with our consultants, but that should not include participation of the applicant's attorney without also having the participation of the planning board's attorney. So I wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody, and we can certainly continue that kind of communication on that basis. But again, it's been practice, and it just makes common sense that whenever an attorney from one side is present, an attorney from the other side should also be present.
Well, we thank you that we will be, at least in those circumstances, be permitted to speak with your consultants. We're happy to follow ordinary protocols, and we will follow ordinary protocols here.
Okay, thank you.
So the second is that I understand that your board declared itself lead agency for purposes of secret at the December meeting. The applicant wasn't here at the January meeting. So over that time, I understand that quite a bit of headway has been made. I did review a memo from your consultant, CPL, which had mentioned that it may be appropriate at this time to set the public hearing for the following meeting for March. I would ask that the board do that so that the public hearing can go forward in March. I anticipate that by that time, our firm will be up to speed and we'll be ready to talk on the substance here a little bit more, but we'd like to make sure that we're beginning to incorporate comments from the public. Again, we're not asking that your board open and close the public hearing, but we are asking that we open it this way. As we continue to take comments from your board, we can also take some comments to the public and start incorporating those into our project.
Understood. So we'll get to that a little bit later. Yep.
Sure. And the last piece is, I also noted that in the CPL memo, they indicated that it may be appropriate for your board to direct them to begin preparation of the EAF Part 2 and Part 3, and a notice of determination of significance or non-significance. So that's another item that we believe likewise can start to get underway as we move forward from now into March. So those were the limited procedural items that I wanted to hit on. And looking forward to working with your board on this project.
Well, thank you very much. Good to see you on board. So if we can maybe just get a quick overview of some of the other more technical changes to the plans that came in with the recent submission. We know what they are, but the audience out there looking at TV probably doesn't know yet. So
good evening, everyone. Corey Chase with Dynamic Traffic. Glad to see everyone again. I'm just going to pull up the site plan. I think, and the rest of the project team can correct me if I'm wrong, but the biggest changes from a site plan perspective, and again, in my opinion, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a traffic engineer, were related to the traffic, the access, and site circulation. Since the time that we were last before the board, we did have the opportunity to get comments from the Department of Transportation. We also had the opportunity to respond to comments that were issued by the board's consultant, CPL. Through the course of that, there were some changes to the site access along Route 9D. It was really consistent with what had been asked for by both the board's traffic consultant as well as the Department of Transportation. Just again, zooming in on the Route 90 frontage. So previously, the westernmost driveway was full movement. That driveway has now been restricted to right turn in, right turn out only. The central site driveway was going to be right in, right out. That is now restricted to right in only. And we are still maintaining the right turn exit only driveway, which is located directly adjacent to the existing convenience store and gas station. So with the access that's currently proposed as part of the project, the left turn movements will all occur at the adjacent signalized intersection at Pappas Lane. I know we've had some ongoing discussions about that. The department was consistent with the board's traffic consultant. Obviously, we felt it best to heed those recommendations and provide the right in, right out only driveway, the right in only driveway, and have all left turns occur at the signalized intersection. So that's been done. The Department of Transportation had some technical comments on the traffic study. We did have the opportunity to respond and resubmit to the DOT. That resubmission is still currently under review. We did get some additional comments from CPL that we'll be happy to respond to, and again, mainly in regards to the technical comments within the report. Nothing in my professional opinion that will substantially change the results, but certainly look forward to working with them and resolving those comments. We'll be happy to forward any additional comments that we get from the department to the board's consultants so that they're in the loop as far as where we're going with DOT.
Okay. Well, why don't we move over to our consultants from CPL, and we have a very good and lengthy MO. So do you want to start off, Liz, and give us a synopsis of that? We
Brief,
certainly don't
really
want you to
brief.
read them word for word.
No. No. First of all, nice to see you again, Mr. Lefkowitz. We were just at a meeting two nights ago, actually, up in Clinton. So anyway, I'm glad that the DOT consultation happened. I know that we've been concerned about that from the get-go because it does affect the configuration of the whole site. So that was great. A lot of good improvements there. Let's see. I had one comment just alluding to the fact that where Pappas Lane comes out is an intersection going into Brockway Road, and that leads toward the Hudson and just a whole bunch of pretty big neighborhood areas. So I mentioned a pedestrian crosswalk there and some of the other transportation issues that are going on in that area. I feel like both the parking and the loading are looking pretty good. The county was very concerned about way too much parking. And so there's one of my comments that suggests that for the restaurant, maybe some of that parking could be cut out, especially up in that corner where the parking gets a little bit close and is just touching setbacks. And then regarding the loading, I'm kind of looking logically like one loading area could serve that area on the northern end, which is the car wash, convenience, and gas station. Same with the parking. I know you've got several parking spaces there, and I just think with the circulation there, maybe there's a way to show a loading area. I don't know exactly what the code requires. It isn't absolutely clear to show a loading area within, say, an access way. So that's something I think I wrote in the comments to talk to the zoning administrator about that.
Okay. Yeah, we can certainly do that. I think, there's certainly an area directly adjacent to the convenience store with gas that there's no parking that's proposed adjacent to this curb line. We can certainly look at truck circulation and see if that could actually double as a loading area. It's existing asphalt.
Right.
And again, with no parking there, it would certainly make sense to.
Right, and then one of my other comments was to see if there's a way to share loading with the storage and the restaurant, but I don't think that really works. I think there needs to be some kind of loading. I mentioned moving vans coming in during the day, so.
Yeah, I noticed
anyway.
that the loading spaces for the self-storage building are actually inside the building.
Right.
So that wouldn't work too well for the fast food restaurant.
Right.
Yeah, and based on my experience working with a variety of fast food tenants, most of their loading is done off-peak, and it's typically done directly adjacent to the building. They want to get in close proximity to wherever that access door is to the building. So typically it's done off-peak, and a lot of times they just load in the drive aisle, go directly into the freezer area, drop the materials off, and then exit the site.
Right, so if there's some way, I tried looking at other plans on file with the town, and I wasn't seeing how loading is shown on those, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, so I'll let you figure that out. And then you've already mentioned the various procedural actions that I talked about, bottom of page 3, top of page 4. And then I also mentioned that at some point the board may want to weigh in on architectural stuff, but I think you might want to, I don't know if you want to do that tonight or if you want to wait until the next meeting, and I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, well, I think the board has talked about that in the past, and we had a chance to see pretty much the up-to-date revisions that we have now. So I'll ask the board that later, but we just keep moving ahead.
All right, that sounds good.
We do have our architect here available to answer any questions if it pleases the board later.
Oh, great, okay.
Liz, I have a question for you. Liz?
Yes.
The drive-through. A lot of times you go to the drive-through, and the meal is not ready, is there a spot for somebody to park, waiting for their meal to get ready?
I mean, they would have to kind of back out.
What?
So
They, I mean, they couldn't, there's no, I don't think
Just
there's any
looking
place
at
to
it
go,
just
is
now,
there?
and I
Yeah,
just-
so what's anticipated to occur, and you're right, so a lot of times you can go to the drive-through, you'll pull up to the pickup window and they'll say your meal's not ready,
Yeah,
you know, please
go-
pull ahead.
Go someplace.
Yeah. So our intention is that there's these 4 adjacent spaces directly adjacent to the building. You would come out of the drive-through, you'd loop around, you'd stage in one of these spaces here. They would then walk the meal out to
That's
you.
okay.
Ah,
What,
there you go.
the one little thing I
want
still
anybody
go
in front
back
of
to is the car wash. Coming around, once you're all the way up, I can understand, but let's just say you're like the third car in there and you change your mind, there's no way to get out of
Yeah,
there.
you can't get out.
Because you didn't want to have I suggested that there would be like a turnoff and you can go out and around and not have to go through the car wash. Because otherwise, how are you going to back out when cars behind you?
So there is an exit lane right here, so this is an actual curb line opening, so if you do
There
get.
is going to be.
Yeah, if you do get into the
Okay.
drive-through queue,
All right.
you would be able at this point, certainly you're correct, once you're like the second car in line for the tunnel, you're locked in at that point.
You're
But
locked in.
up into that point, there is an exit right here which would put you back into the main drive aisle and you could leave at that point.
That's all I got.
That's fine.
Oh, because there was so much more.
Yeah, but some of it was, some of it, I was looking at it more as plan refinements and was more concerned about kind of the logistics of some of these things,
Yeah, let me just
like
see.
loading and where that's going to go. And I have to say this, I don't know if the board is in agreement with me on parking. I think that the parking requirement, and I think it's 76 spaces for storage.
No.
I mean, I think that was a standard that was just in the code, but I can't imagine that there would be a need at any one time for 76 spaces. I think, is it 10 or 15 in front?
It is, yeah, it's 10, and I can tell you from my professional experience, I've probably worked on close to 50 self-storage facilities. 10 is even high. I mean, I've gone as low as 4 for these facilities, so certainly 76 is
Right.
extremely on the high end of what you would see for these types of facilities.
So
Yeah.
what else did I miss?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that
Go ahead.
later under my comments, but I think the 10 spaces looks sufficient, more than sufficient. So the planning board, though, will have to discuss issuing a parking waiver during
Yes.
the approvals for that. And that's really not an issue because we've done that with many of the previous self-storage facilities that we've been reviewing. So glad you pointed that out. Let me just see if I had any other notes on anything in particular. One thing you did mention also, the buffer area has been modified to now be a minimum of 20 feet wide along pretty much its whole length. And Liz, you had suggested the possibility of some kind of legal arrangement to make sure that that buffer area is not disturbed in the future, since it crosses over the business district and the R15 zoning district lines. And I wanted Dominic to maybe think about that a little bit, for, not right now, but for the future, to see how we might best handle that, whether it could simply be a condition of approval, whether maybe we would want to have the applicant consider some kind of a restrictive deed covenant, or, just putting a note on the site plan even. So, I mean, there are options. We could think about that and address that later.
It would
But
be
I was
nice
just-
to have a survey, some kind of a surveyed area, so we know meets and bounds, because there is no property line there. That's the
Right.
issue.
Yeah, there's an existing zoning line, and that's it, and, zoning lines can always be changed. So, all right, that's something to think about. But I was going to mention in general about the overall modified buffer plans. I think they look very good, and overall, I was very appreciative of the landscaping plan. Thought it was very well done. So, see if I had anything else. While I'm looking, see if any of the planning board members have anything else. Liz went through lighting. So lighting, you were suggesting some additional revisions to help reduce any of the glare and lighting leaving the site.
And I took a look at those areas. I actually put the plans and just went in there and made notes and outlined areas. So for example, in the middle of that landscape buffer, because it was a really nicely designed buffer. It wasn't just a straight line of things. It was nicely clustered. So I went in there and outlined anything that was evergreen so that I could see that there was a good core from one end to the other. And then the same is true of outlining places where the glare was beyond what's allowed in the code.
So you did talk about the architectural design of the buildings, and I think based on previous discussions, the board has been pretty happy with the way those have developed. I don't know that we'll need to talk a lot more about it, but if any board members have, additional thoughts or comments, this would be a good time to bring them up.
The architecture, no.
Yeah, the architecture of the buildings.
Is the car wash, is that just a generic thing right now, or is they have somebody?
It's just generic for now.
Okay, and is it, okay. I just said I can't answer that. I was just going to see if it's a manned or an automatic car wash or not.
We're anticipating it to be like a tunnel type car wash, so it'd be automatic. I would expect there to be still at least one employee there, for observations, just to make sure that everything's running smoothly.
Do you want to see if we can throw up the architectural renderings, just since we're talking about it, just refresh everyone's memories?
Good afternoon.
Hi, thanks.
One second here.
While you're looking for that, I'll just mention I'll have some additional comments I wanted to make about the traffic review.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Marina Velarde, here from SGW. Since our last meeting, we had addressed some of the comments that we discussed here to include the height of the basement, the grading around the site on the elevations, which we've included. We've also included a signage package for the self-storage building that we can review. But yes.
So those are pretty much preliminary sign package, but there will be some more details coming later, especially for the fast food establishment.
Correct, yeah. Right now, this is for the self-storage facility.
Yeah.
Other than those small comments that we had the last time around, the elevations are relatively the same. We did add some additional tags to the buildings. I think there was a comment on that. So I'm open to any questions.
No additional questions on that?
Yeah, it looks better.
Yeah, I think they're looking pretty good now. And I think they, although I still think that kind of building is a little bit out of scale with the general area. I think you've done enough to make it fit in much better with the site and the surrounding area, and considering the gateway area on Route 9D that we've talked about before. So we appreciate that. All right, so why don't we talk a little bit more about some of the other circulation and access aspects. So my thoughts I think it's progressing in definitely the right direction. I know the state DOT has begun weighing in. We saw the preliminary comments from DOT, and they'll be further evaluating that gas station entrance area. Well, actually, we won't call it an entrance area, we'll call it a driveway, because it really, as you are proposing it now as the applicant, it's really going to be an exit right turn only, so it really won't be egress, which helps, but I think we're all looking forward to hearing from State DOT on what their final determination is going to be.
Yeah, and as you've heard me testify to previously, really, unfortunately, the issue is the existing tenant has a lease that's for the next couple of years. The applicant's committed to, once that lease is up, we're committed to closing that access point altogether. Unfortunately, given how this convenience store and the fuel pump islands are situated now, really to maintain circulation around those fuel pump islands, we need to have a point of egress there. And it's going to be right turn egress only. As was suggested by the board last time, and we were happy to accommodate, adding that additional sidewalk along the frontage of the convenience store really allowed us the ability to channelize that driveway further and really angle it. So, it will really restrict it to right turnouts only. So we're working through the DOT. They had a similar comment to what the board and its professionals had expressed. We're conveying similar information to the DOT in regards to the existing lease and, what we need to honor for that existing tenant. And we've also committed to them that when that lease is up, we're more than willing to close that access point.
Yeah, and I think the CPL memo mentioned that also the county in their GML referral comments also mentioned the possibility of closing that access off. Now, in terms of pedestrian safety in the area, I think some of us on the board have opined that pedestrian safety would also be much safer, as well as traffic safety, if it were possible to close off that driveway at the gas station, because that would allow a much more contiguous sidewalk going all the way to the intersection with 9D. And another comment on pedestrian safety is that I think it would be appropriate for DOT to consider a pedestrian crosswalk across 9D at the Pappas Lane intersection with a pedestrian-controlled signal that would make it vastly more safe for pedestrians. It's really crazy crossing that area. I see people trying to cross it all the time, and it's sort of like it's like praying.
Yeah, we're amenable to approach DOT and discuss that. The sidewalk actually does extend all the way to the corner of Pappas Lane, so there is a small crosswalk here, obviously across where that driveway connection is to Route 90, but we do pick the sidewalk back up and continue it all the way to the corner. So we are amenable to approaching DOT and discussing the potential. I'm assuming, Mr. Chairman, that you're referring to installing a crosswalk on this leg of the intersection?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're certainly amenable to approaching the department, having that discussion with them about the potential for that, as well as the implementation of pedestrian control signals.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that briefly at the December meeting, so yeah, it would definitely be good to pursue that and see what DOT would think about that. While we're talking about traffic access circulation, did any board members have anything else you wanted to mention?
I do. Okay. Just a couple quick ones. I know you changed the last one from full access to right in, right out only. And I know that's a DOT suggestion, and I'm not against it. My only worry about it is that if somebody's driving south on 9D and they're looking at the restaurant in front of them, they may not know to turn on Pappas. And that's a concern. They're going to get to that spot, and I don't know what they're going to do, right? Whether they're going to try to go in there somehow, or they're going to stop traffic, or they may just keep going. But how do we solve that issue? Because you're going to have a restaurant there that's going to want people to drive into their restaurant and not to keep passing them. So I don't know if signage is a way to try to do it, to let people know to turn on Pappas. Because if not, that business is going to lose a lot of business as people just drive right by it.
Yeah, and that was my initial thought, quite
Yeah.
honestly, when we were proposing it as full movement, was specifically for that. We heard, though, from the town's consultants and from DOT that they weren't in favor of maintaining that. So I think you're correct. I think it's going to be, whether it's a panel on the ID sign at the intersection, we'll have to include that restaurant as well. So then, as people approach the intersection, they'll see the sign for the restaurant,
Yeah.
knowing that they'll need to turn there.
Yeah, I just think some sort of signage to let them know, because, or else if I'm the person that's gonna get that restaurant, I wouldn't wanna get it. I'm definitely losing all the customers going south. So, and then just to clarify, I did speak to county planning, and in her memo, Emily, she didn't mention the gas station at all. She was actually talking about the elimination of that middle one, which is now right-in only. So when I spoke to her, she said her memo had nothing to do with the gas station at all. It was, she was talking about that right-in only to get rid of that one. That's what she was talking about. So just to clarify that.
Oh, that's important. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the reviewers that I was working with, and I sense that the project team also, the site is just oriented in such a way that it's not really clear, what direction you should be referring to when you're talking about
which is
something.
what's north, what's south.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just,
They always confuse me. They start talking these, I'm going north and south on this thing, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's when you're driving
Yeah,
along
when you
9D,
drive-
that's typically,
That's what I'm
you think of it
thinking.
as north and south.
Yeah, so, but yeah, just, to clarify that, because I still think that's an issue, and I know you guys have to deal with that, but,
Yeah, I actually was quite interested to see State DOT's strong stance on minimizing access points on 9D. And that, I think, just shows that they are coming into the modern world and considering safe streets and complete streets aspects. But, yeah, that is definitely going to be up to State DOT, but I myself will keep pushing for closing off that gas station driveway as soon as possible.
Yeah,
And then-
I kind of understand why Felix is saying it, because I'll be honest with you, I drive a lot, and I'm around a lot of places, and I see things in this village where, for years, there's been a thing coming out of the CVS Plaza that you're not supposed to make a left-hand turn, and people make a left-hand turn. They're actually going out the entranceway because they're so confused, and other than putting a divider in the there, I don't think you're ever going to totally stop somebody from making a left-hand turn into that restaurant.
Again,
DOT could
we
do
have
what they
to-
want if somebody's not there to enforce it, just saying. I mean, I understand his concern is that, but there's nothing you could do about it because you really don't want people doing a left over there, but.
You don't, and certainly, with signage, with the provision of the island, the way the driveway's channelized, we do whatever we can. Obviously, we can't control.
No.
If somebody wants to make a left, and you're correct, unless the road's divided physically, somebody will attempt to do it. But, we try to design with best practices in mind and hope that people will generally obey the signage and the intentions of the operations of the driveway.
Are you going to put up signs internally to say go north or go south on 9D?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We haven't got to that extent of detail yet, but certainly on-site directional signage, directing people back to the signal, to make that exit movement would certainly, especially when you're talking about people in the fast food area, to get them, back out to Pappas Lane to then go north on 9.
But that's only for people who can read.
It's true.
Is the intent for Pappas Lane, it's still to remain private, correct?
That's our intention. Yeah, it's, obviously we control half of it. Half of it is on the bank parcel as well. So we're intending on upgrading up to where the drive aisle intersects towards the rear of the property. So that road will be reconstructed, curbed, in a.
Okay, because the gray hatching only shows like part of that road being
Yeah, it's weird.
resurfaced, I guess.
Correct.
So you won't be resurfacing the entire.
The portion that we control. My apologies.
See, I mean, that's a concern for me. If this Pappas Lane is going to be the left in, left out point, that's going to receive a lot of traffic. If this entire road is not completely improved,
wait,
there's going to be a lot of problems because this road needs to be accessible to emergency vehicles, garbage trucks. What assurances do we have that that's going to be properly maintained at all times? It's a private road. So, yeah, right in, right out everywhere else, but Pappas Lane is the left in, left out location. You're going to get all the heavy vehicles, a lot of usage coming in. That fast food place is going to receive a lot of, a lot of traffic. If entire width of Pappas Lane is not improved, Pappas Lane's, it's a minefield right now. It's destroyed. And if it's not fully improved, then it might be worse off than it is now. And then, like I said, what assurances does the town have? Because it's got state access points, state route access points. What assurances are there going to be that this is going to be plowed and cleared at all times? It has to be, because I mean, you got a car wash, you got fast food. There has to be clear access to that at all times.
Yeah, I think it goes into site maintenance. I mean, certainly the operators of this facility are going to want to make sure that, one, the road is maintained and in proper functioning condition.
I mean,
clear snow.
We may need to consider some pretty clear conditions
that's
to
gotta be
that.
clear at all times. I mean,
Well, certainly any tenant of this facility is going to want the same, because if it's not clear, then they don't have access, so.
I don't doubt that, but I'm just in terms of assurances from our
Certainly on
side.
the municipality's end, yeah.
I know, I'm
Well,
sure
Pappas?
you want access for the business, so.
At this point?
But I think
It's,
So, yes, Liz, I was going to ask you to
So-
mention that you talked
I'm
to
over
our
here.
new highway superintendent. So Liz has talked to our new highway superintendent, Carmine Istvan. Why don't you
Right.
tell us what you found out?
So, we kept looking at it going, is it possible that was ever a town road? And so we went ahead and emailed directly, and he said, no, that's never been a town road. It's private. And actually, as I'm sitting here, John and I are like, did you know it wasn't going to be improved? Honestly, looking at the plans, it hadn't occurred to me that it wasn't going to be improved. When I look at these plans, what I see is a proposed roadway coming off of, entrance to the site. I shouldn't say roadway, an entrance to the site, full width entrance into the site, and kind of a internal, access way network that goes all the way around. In fact, that internal access network is what makes it possible to do the write-ins at certain places and use Pappas Lane, because no matter where you go on the site, you can always come back out to Pappas Lane. Because sometimes you look at it initially, it's like, oh, if you can only do those restricted movements, how are you going to get, how are you going to get back out? And
Pappas go to also to the residents in the back there?
It does.
It does.
Yeah,
So
but
does that belong to them, that road?
Well, if you look at the tax mapping, it does show, it's not clear how improved the road is. I think at some point, I don't know what the use used to be. I imagine it was either cottages and/or trailers, an area where people could just have a little place to come upstate maybe at some point, and then it turned into a more permanent residential place, because that does happen in a lot of communities. So I don't know if it was ever paved. Again, I haven't even been to the site. I've been just looking at it on aerial mapping, but we do have to have Pappas Lane improved, yes.
Yeah, and I apologize for the confusion on that. So I'm not saying that we're not improving it. We're actually, we're doing significant improvements to it.
Okay, I thought there was some on the demolition plan.
Yeah, there are. And so we're
Okay.
we're adding all the curbing in front of the gas station. That, currently now it's just wide open asphalt where you can basically go from the signal almost at an angle towards the convenience store to pull into the gas station. So that's going to be completely curbed off. We're doing curbing all the way up on our portion of Pappas Lane, so we're providing a definitive curb line.
Gotcha.
As you turn left from the signal, head up Pappas Lane towards those two access aisles. We're also widening the road slightly to normalize the width, so it's consistent width. As you mentioned, it varies in width now, just depending on what portion of the road you're in. So there is going to be significant improvements. I'll defer to our civil engineer and Lee as well as to what ability we have to, because a portion of the road's not on our property. A portion of the road is actually
I see that.
on the bank portion of the property. So, there's certain restrictions that we have, but on our frontage, there are going to be significant improvements done.
That's what I just wanted to ask you guys and Dominic, like, if nobody really knows whose road it is, do they have to get an easement to use that road that way for the development?
Well, I was going to ask a similar question. shouldn't we receive from the applicant whatever kind of document about use and maintenance of that private road may exist? And if there is none that anyone can find that's been filed somewhere in a deed or whatever, we should know about that, I would think.
And if there isn't one, or if there is one, in any case, whether there's one or not, ultimately, there needs to be some kind of a document that covers the use and construction and maintenance. And then, as we're talking about this, on the map, if you're looking at the northern corner, there's like a flare that goes out. And there is a small area where there isn't, it's off of the property. But that flare is going to be needed for people taking a right to go northbound. So if you're, when I say northern corner, I'm kind of being literal. It's right where Pappas Lane comes out. So.
Yeah, we can certainly provide the board with whatever easement documentation we have. And like Lee's getting up to speed, so he'll have all that information for you shortly for sure.
Yeah.
I am still getting up to speed, but I can say I think it'll be easy enough for us to put together a document that we can put on file with the town that would dictate and detail what maintenance and improvements would be on the road. I was actually going to jump in, but I didn't want to interrupt. But I think the similar thing could be done with the concerns regarding the lease and the gas station and the closing off that driveway. That could certainly be a condition of final approval. That as soon as the lease is up, we'll close off that right turn. So it could be worked into it as well. I think both of those are easy enough.
And if I can just jump on that for a moment, my preference is always that whatever kind of conditions there are, that most of it is on the plan, as much that can be on the plan as possible, because I always say 5 to 10 years down the road, the only thing anybody's going to pull out of a drawer is going to be that plan set. And if there are all these little attachments, they are someplace else. So that's my request.
So also with talking about all of this and the new pressures that are going to be on Pappas Lane, I know that David Hastings, CPL's traffic expert, did mention really that needs to be analyzed further in the traffic study, talking about in an effort to accurately evaluate impacts to the Pappas Lane intersection, the traffic analysis should include a scenario where traffic volumes, well, all the changes in all the driveways, but also the future changes to the gas station access really need to be looked at and see what the impacts on Pappas Lane would be.
Yeah, I can tell you from our perspective, we did model, the revised traffic study does account for all the restrictions on 90 currently. We can certainly add a scenario where we model the impacts of closing that last remaining right out only driveway. The changes to the operational conditions will be very minimal, just given the amount of volume that's going to be processed through there, but we can certainly add that as an additional scenario in the report.
And I did take a look at aerial photography throughout the town, and there are a couple of places where gas stations come in off of a side road, like off of Route 9, via a side road to get into the gas station. So I think people are becoming accustomed to that.
Yeah, and if the layout wasn't in its current configuration, we wouldn't be opposed to that. Unfortunately, it's a function of where the building is and where the canopy is, and because they're currently so close to Route 9D, if you were to close this office in its entirety, the maneuvering area that you're left with in front of the building in between the fuel pump islands is very minimal, and that's really what's necessitating keeping this. And we agree, it'd be in a betterment to have it closed in its entirety. But unfortunately, at the risk of, potential litigation from an existing tenant due to damages by closing off, we're already closing off a lot of his access. So to close it off entirely, we felt it wasn't going to be in the best interest. So again, that was, really our point in trying to keep this open at least until that lease expires, and then, you know, as Lee mentioned, including it as a condition, you know, that once that lease is up, you know, we're more than amenable to close that in the future.
That reminds me, the proposed extension of the sidewalk into the Route 90 right-of-way, has that been discussed further yet with DOT?
DOT didn't have any objection to it, so we're going to proceed with it as shown on this plan.
Okay. I noticed that's why it's now shown on the actual site plan, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else on these related issues of traffic, access, circulation? I think we've covered a good bit here. Talking about the internal access ways, we see that the width of the drive aisle in front of the self-storage facility has been narrowed down from 30 feet to 25 feet. So that helps a little bit, I think. But again, with all that internal circulation, we just need to make sure that and especially with some restrictions in the access points, that there's adequate ability for vehicles to move back and forth really between all the different uses on that parcel. And the loading spaces, I guess the applicant is requesting planning board waivers for reducing the number of loading spaces overall on the site. I think that's something we can address. Any other questions or comments from board members before I ask Dominic whether you have any questions or comments you'd like to make?
I mean, I think procedurally at this point, and this was, you know, mentioned by council at the beginning, is that the next step for the board to consider would be to whether or not it's ready for a public hearing for this project.
All right, well, I do want to pursue that. Before we get into that, though, why don't we ask John, what do you think in terms of engineering considerations to set a public hearing?
Yeah, their latest submission addressed many of our comments, especially the SWIP. We believe their SWIP is in good shape now. So from an engineering perspective, we'd certainly be comfortable with this moving forward.
Well, since we're talking about a public hearing, why don't we, and if planning board members agree with all of that, should there be a public hearing scheduled for the March 14th meeting? And if so, would someone like to make a motion to schedule that for the March 14th meeting for Basis Industrial Route 90 Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as possible?
So moved.
Felix moves it.
Second.
Anthony seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we're setting a public hearing for the March meeting. We need locations of public hearing signs.
It's a big frontage.
3 signs?
A lot on the frontage.
2 or 3,
Yeah, I was thinking maybe 3, one at the corner of
signs.
Route 90 and Pappas Lane, one in front of the Red Pepper Diner, which is going to be, I guess, kind of near where the central driveway is going to be, and one at the western site frontage, which is near where the western site access will be. I guess the only additional one that I thought about, but I'm not so sure, is on Pappas Lane further in, but
Mr. Chair?
normally by the time anyone gets in there,
We still have the gas station there, and that's where a lot of people go.
yeah,
So I put it somewhere where the people going into the gas station can read it.
well, that's the corner of Route 90 and
All right,
Pappas
I don't know
Lane.
which entrance they're going in with
Well,
this
right,
change.
right now, that's part of the problem. It's kind of a free-for-all, isn't it?
Yeah. So whichever entrance the people go in, or go out.
Well, as long as we're not going to be, blocking or interfering with the access, because that's a pretty messed up access.
Yeah, I agree, I just,
Yeah, and it's not so much the cars that are going into the gas station and then moving on into Beacon or somewhere else that we're concerned about seeing a public hearing notice. It's residents and users, of that area. So I think the 3 probably would suffice.
So you're thinking one sort of on the sort of southern end of the site, and you're the right-in, where the right-in, right-out would be?
That's what I call the
Yes.
western site entrance.
Western, okay.
Yeah, I like her southern is better.
Yeah, I do too, but the plans and the
Yeah,
DOT
you're right.
are always now
It
referring
is
to the
actually
western, the
western.
central, et cetera. Go ahead.
And then another one, almost in the area of the right-in before you get to the gas station?
Yeah.
Well, that's where the Red Pepper Diner is, basically.
Yeah.
You need to go out and look at the site, Liz.
Yeah, I think it's time.
Have you ever been to the Red Pepper Diner, which is now in Beacon,
Beacon.
in a different location?
Very good.
You should try it.
And then the other one would be right at Pappas.
Yes.
Okay. I was also going to just see if the board and our consultants could start thinking about the seeker review process. So anyway, my thinking was we have revised plans, we've got a, revised full EAF Part 1. The new attorney for the applicant brought this up as a question. It might be appropriate to ask CPL to prepare. In my mind, I would ask to have preparation of a draft EAF Parts 2 and 3 as a first step, and have the board go through those and hold off on any determination of significance for after we've gone, for another meeting after we've gone through those documents. But wanted to see what the board thought about that and see whether there might be a motion to request that CPL prepare draft EAF Parts 2 and 3 for the basis industrial Route 9D site development plan and special use permit for the board's discussion and consideration at the March meeting.
I would agree with the preparation of both of those documents.
Yeah.
Do you want to
And
move
not
that?
going any farther than that at this point, just
Yeah.
based on the fact that we may get some public comment. And I think there's quite a few elements of the EAF Part 2 and Part 3 that this board needs to heavily consider. So
Yeah.
I'll make the motion for the EAF Part 2 and 3 for our consultants to prepare the draft documents.
Okay, is there a second to
I'll
that?
second it.
Felix seconds it. So further discussion in my own discussion, that's basically what I was thinking, that we've done that several times with some of the larger scale, more complicated projects that we've reviewed, and started with the draft EAFs Parts 2 and 3. And in addition, we could and may very well leave the public hearing open after, seeing who shows up to comment and how the further plan preparations and revisions have been going.
Okay.
And then I was going to make another comment about the overall process later. Let me come back to that. But first, I wanted to make sure, and I know that some of the other board members might have some thoughts or comments about the letter of January 26, 2024 that Mr. O'Rourke sent to Supervisor Albra. So I'm going to read some prepared comments that I made, because I was quite disturbed when I saw that letter. But I appreciate that Supervisor Albra forwarded this letter to me as planning board chair, along with Dominic Cordisco and our CPL consultants. And I then asked Debbie Colonna to send it to the full planning board, since the letter would most likely be entered into the planning department project file. So that letter sets forth applicant concerns regarding the basis industrial application process. I don't plan on spending time tonight debating statements in the letter. I just want to indicate my own reactions and then give other planning board members a chance to do so if they would like to. But overall, I think it's rather inappropriate for an applicant to address such a letter to the town supervisor in what I thought was an apparent attempt to put pressure on the planning board, when it's well known that the planning board has the responsibility to review and approve site development plans and special use permit applications like this. I spoke with the supervisor about that, and I'm grateful that our town supervisor understands that the planning board functions independently from the supervisor's office and the town board, and that the planning board must operate under specific state and town laws and requirements. I'm certain that Mr. O'Rourke, at that time that he wrote it, and the applicant team as well, understands that. I think the planning board also understands that the intent of this proposal is to clean up and revitalize an existing, developed, and underutilized site, but we have to balance the applicant's interests with the public safety and general welfare of the town and its residents. The process for this application has actually been consistent with the planning board's approach with other large-scale, complex project reviews. The planning board appreciates the applicant's willingness to address many of the planning board's concerns and questions about details of the proposal, with plan revisions occurring during the process. But Mr. O'Rourke states in his letter that the planning board and CPL have continued to put roadblocks ahead of the applicant, and that this project has been riddled by an excessive number of meetings and comments that have already been addressed. Well, those kinds of statements are not helpful, and in fact, I believe are misleading. I'd counter that some of the so-called delays expressed by Mr. O'Rourke can be attributed to the applicant team inadequately responding to questions or requests for information from the planning board or our consultants. And in addition, the first several submittals by the applicant, and in fact, the first several meetings were spent discussing what I considered conceptual plans lacking sufficient detail for the planning board and our consultants to fully review. Although in the long run, I think it's been helpful having those conceptual discussions. It took quite a while for the plan submittals to be complete enough to consider the next steps in the project review. But as evidenced by what we've just done with the motions we just went through, I think it's evident that we are now reaching the point in the process, thanks to the cooperation of the applicant team, to start moving ahead with more fully detailed plans, and thanks to the hard work of our planning board, our consultants, our planning board secretary, and the applicant team, I think we're in a good place moving this ahead now. So that's what I wanted to say. Any board members want to add anything?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I had a bunch of stuff to say, but now that Mr. O'Rourke and his team are not here, I think I'm going to reserve that a little bit. I just think what that letter was an attempt to intimidate this board, not to ask questions, not to do our job, and that's not going to happen. Our supervisor has said many times the developers don't run Fishkill, and they don't. You know, and we're not going to allow that to happen here. And if we have a question, we're going to ask the question. And if we don't feel it's been answered correctly or adequately, we're going to ask it again the next meeting. It's our right. That's what we're here for. Okay? So, but I don't want to get into too much of it because I'm glad we have new representation. But I had a lot to say to Mr. O'Rourke and his team, and glad he's not here. Okay? All right. That's it.
And let me just add a big part of the reason I'm here so that we could press reset on that relationship. And I'm glad that your board is ready to move forward.
Yeah.
We're ready to move forward. We're looking forward to working with you all. Thank you for setting the public hearing for next month. Looking forward to that. So very much looking forward to moving the process forward.
Right.
Yeah, I think both of you said it pretty well. This project and this process has been moving along. I think a lot of the previous plans were all in an effort to get to this point. So I saw this whole process as moving along, and I'm glad that it is tonight. So I'm not going to say anything further. I think everything else has already been said.
I'll try to not say too much more, but I don't think Mr. O'Rourke fully understood the complexity of the actual details of this project, and he was not here for most of the meetings. And I actually have to admit, I admire the work done by the actual applicant team who has been here continually at the meetings, and look forward to working with you all more on getting this to a point where the site can really become an attractive feature in the town, which, you know, it's not such a pretty area to look at right now, and will certainly look much better if this application can move ahead. But we're doing it the right way, as Felix mentioned. We don't like doing things the wrong way. We don't like taking shortcuts. Some of the projects we reviewed in the past have taken a heck of a lot longer than this one to get to the point that we're at. And a lot of times, it is because of applicants who have not responded necessarily in a full way to requests that the planning board has made. And I won't mention any specific other projects, but it happens, and that's part of the development review process, and something that the planning board has to consider a lot as we work on these things.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just add one more thing. In their letter, they talked about one part of our review where CPL opined on something, and they thought that was unjustly, held up the project. That's what they're here for. If we want them we want their opinion, we believe in their expertise. That's why they're here, to help us. If we ask for it, we expect it. And we're not going to have an applicant tell us when we can use our consultants to help us. It's ridiculous that they can even say that. That's not even in their purview. If we ask a question, it's in their purview. We need their opinion, and we want their expertise. So, again, not against you, but that was I thought it was very unprofessional for Mr. O'Rourke. He's worked with us many times to try to go to the supervisor and really, in a sense, try to push this board around. It's not right.
Anyone else want to say anything?
Move on.
But if not,
I do
go.
believe I did make a motion for the EAF Part 2, Part 3. Did we vote on
No, we didn't.
for the preparation of that?
You're right. This was all part of the discussion, wasn't it?
Yes.
I just want to make sure we get that.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think we did
I
that.
don't mean
Not a
to,
final vote.
I don't mean to undermine your...
No.
Yeah, we kind of went off on a side
Yep.
road there. A side road named Pappas Lane.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Right in, right
Anthony
on.
moved it, Felix seconded it. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion to prepare the draft EAF Parts 2 and 3 carries 7-0. Any further questions from the applicant team?
None from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next month.
See you next month. Thank you.
Can I just get one more point of clarification? So typically, what has happened, sorry to interrupt, is that an email request will come from the applicant's team to try to set up dates, possible dates for everybody with their busy schedules to meet. And so based on the discussion tonight, if I know that the applicant's attorney is going to be there, I'll copy you, Dominic, and we'll figure that out.
Yeah, and that should be a scheduling question more than if our attorney
Yep.
can make it, because if one attorney is going to be there, then both attorneys are
Yep.
going to be there.
And we'll make sure, we've worked with Dominic before, we'll make sure he's copied on everything.
Okay.
We'll include him. Not a
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Good to see you.
Okay. All right, we're doing great here. We're going to keep moving.
I didn't know what to do.
So, yeah, if anybody has to take an individual break, feel free, but we're going to keep going with the project reviews.
I do have a question for this.
So, the next and last project review tonight is Homeland Towers Communication Tower, Route 73, Route 9, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit. Board to review the application.
Thank you.
Board to review the application and supporting documents that were reviewed at the January 11th Planning Board meeting. The submission made by the applicant's representative on January 23rd, 2024, and to discuss and consider making a recommendation to the town board regarding a hiring of a radio frequency RF engineer consultant that shall be reimbursed by means of an escrow deposit being remitted to the town of Fishkill by the project sponsor. And the planning board may consider a motion to enter into an executive session to discuss the possible hiring of an RF consultant. That would be after we've gone through, the full project review tonight. So, welcome back.
Thank you for having us.
If you'd like to update the board on the submission and where we stand.
Absolutely. Again, for the record, my name is David Kenny. I'm an attorney with Snyder & Snyder. I'm here tonight to represent the applicants Homeland Towers and Verizon Wireless. Since our last meeting, we made a written submission responding to some of the comments received from the planning board at the last meeting. It included a revised alternative site analysis correcting a typo that the chairman pointed out to us. We also did submit a supplemental alternatives analysis, which is we sent letters to two of the property owners that we were asked to provide an update on since they had responded to our prior requests back in the original ASA. So we then sent additional letters to see if there was any interest from these two property owners. We also went through in the alternatives analysis and showed that one of the properties may actually be closer to residences on Carroll Lane. So while we did send a letter, we think that that actually would be more intrusive property because it would be closer to residences. We also included the cost removal letter that was requested of us, presenting an amount for the removal of the tower. And we did also, I think the main component of the filing was the balloon test methodology letter and a public notice sample. We also received the comments from the board's planner, as well as some public comments that were provided to us by the board secretary. It seems from most of the comments that we're receiving from both the board planner as well as from the public comments, they want to know if the tower is going to be visible, particularly from their homes if it's a member of public comment, as well as from the board planner's comments. So we just received the board planner's comment memo, which is very detailed last week. We still have some time to respond to those comments, but I think before we make a full responsive submission, I think we should try to target a balloon test date. Again, the purpose of trying to schedule that now, it doesn't bind the board to any kind of approval or any substantive decision on the tower, but I think it'll add to the application because if we can have this done during the leaf off conditions, which Puxatawny Phil didn't see his shadow, so it may be coming sooner this year than normal years. But generally around mid-April is when the buds start coming on the trees. I know that the planner suggested some March dates in her memo and also discussed some possible notice requirements. I do point out that the local code, the wireless code, doesn't require any notice for the balloon test. However, we do support doing public notices, so whatever the board would like us to do as far as public notice, we would follow that. I'm just noting though, if 10 business days is factored into scheduling the test, we want to make sure that we schedule that test tonight because the next meeting at March 14th, if we schedule that at the next meeting, we may be running into the leaf off season. So that would be our main focus for tonight, would be scheduling the balloon test. And then if you have any other items that you want us to go over tonight, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have another very good and lengthy memo from CPL. So if you guys would like to summarize it again.
Yes.
But maybe this is good. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in there, so don't skip over things just because it might take time. We have,
Okay.
I won't say we have plenty of
So I
time.
can loosen
'cause-
up the leash a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, start wherever you think
Okay.
appropriate.
All right. Well, I'm going to just go ahead and start at the beginning. I hope that we can, I don't know if we can tonight have a discussion about radio frequency engineer or consultant. I don't
Yes,
know
we
if that-
can, and we
okay.
will.
Okay, good.
We
I think that's
definitely-
very important.
We definitely can and will.
Good, because there are aspects of the review that I certainly, and, we don't have that kind of personnel at CPL. I just briefly touch base on the first, on the first page, the different code sections. The telecommunications towers and personal wireless service facility requirements are pretty hefty. I tried to go through and pick out what pertains to this type of tower. So I think I stuck to that pretty well, but there's still plenty. And I wanted to cover all the bases, mainly because of the shot clock. The more that we get out on the table immediately, you know, I'm saying for the board, these are all the things we think we need right now. We're giving you the full list. So that was the goal there. Let's see. On the visual impact analysis, I know that we initially got the maps and then we had a little bit more information. I think the board has probably reviewed several visual analyses. I think I'm looking at my comment number 9 on page 2, that if possible, it would be helpful to have some kind of a draft outline for the visual impact analysis. Just some kind of an outline that says what their approach will be. That would be very helpful.
You mean in addition to the balloon test methodology letter that we submitted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in other words, the balloon test methodology is important because we need those images, but then all of those images are going to be presented in an analysis, so it'd be helpful to know.
Sure, absolutely. We can provide that. Usually what we do is we coordinate with either the planner or if the board's RF consultant wants to take part in that process, try to coordinate with you to see how many photos do we want to turn into photo simulations, which particular ones are of importance.
Right.
So yeah, we can absolutely provide an outline, but it'll probably be more of a sketch and filled in as we have the balloon test. Obviously,
At least a concept to work from. That would be helpful.
Absolutely, we can provide something like that.
Yeah,
And even a
that'd be
sample that we provided to another jurisdiction.
Even
we can
better.
do that as well.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
To some degree, there was a beginning of that in the
Yep.
Saratoga Associates letter, which was very good for the
Yep.
balloon testing, but
Yep.
yeah, that's good.
That was very helpful. And let's see, we'll come back to the balloon test dates, and, but one thing I do want to mention, this is on page 3, that I'm suggesting, I know that I worded in here that we consider using the public hearing requirements, even though it's not specifically for this. But because of the public interest in this, I'm suggesting at least 15 business days before the date of the balloon test for notification. And the requirement is 10. So I'm just saying, you know, by way of getting the word out so you don't end up having members of the public come in and say, how come we didn't know about this? So that's my recommendation.
You're shortening the time?
No, I'm lengthening the
All right.
notification time from 10 business days to 15. So it is a longer notification time. So that's one of my points there. Let's see. And then on page 4 of 16, because at first we didn't have a list describing what are these locations. We had an image, which is fine. It was good to start looking at that. So on page 4, I've listed I don't know what an SPL is now, but it's been so long since I've written this. Suggested photo locations. So the suggested photo locations, or SPLs, the ones that I saw on the map, I've done my best to try to describe those for the planning board at the top of the page, on page 4, A through K.
Yeah, that was very helpful.
And then I started looking around to see where there might be other sites. And so at the bottom of page 4, number 14, A through F, well, really A through E, I'm making some recommendations about other sites, but then I didn't know if the board had other locations.
Yeah, so we'll check that in a minute.
Yep.
And just to note, we did confirm with Saratoga Associates, we'd be able to add all of those locations into the balloon test, so we'll accept those locations.
Okay.
We believe that it's not going to be visible based on our analysis that we have, but we'll absolutely include those locations.
Okay, good. Let's see, hang on. I'm looking at comment 16, which is just one more reason, this has to do with Federal Communications Compliance Report. It's one more reason why we need an RF consultant to start looking at this stuff sooner rather than later. Let's see. And then I went into as much detail as I could on the site plan. I haven't seen a tower this tall in my own career. I've reviewed a lot of cell towers, and that doesn't mean it's not the right height or anything. But it's the first time I've seen one this tall. And so, one of these comments in here, I said something about possible, oh, here it is, top of page 6. So I'm talking at the bottom of page 5 about the design, and I'm asking for a color rendering at the bottom of page 5. And at the top of page 6, comment D, alternative stealth designs may be appropriate at this site, such as the design that would appear to be a monument, a water tower, a fire tower, a silo, etc. A smooth ground pole with antennas inside the pole is another alternative design worth considering. And there are other alternative designs. And I usually try to bring this up out front, not for you to say, oh, this is what we want tonight, but to start looking at those. I could potentially provide some illustrations in my next review.
I was just going to ask, I don't think I've ever seen an illustration of the smooth brown pole with antennas inside. I mean, I assume it would just be a pole that looks brown.
Yes.
And you wouldn't really see the antennas.
Right. It's like a bigger tree stem, but it's not a frankenpine.
But how does that work?
But it's big.
It's bigger. It's bigger because you have to have that width for the, although there may be a slightly different configuration of antenna that way, but.
Right. And it could be brown, it could also be sort of maybe sort of earth tones at the lower level, and then when it's up above the tree line, something like a galvanized steel finish, gray, silvery gray, so that it's more likely to blend in with sky background, so.
Can I just comment on that? So this is what is called a unipole. It basically, it's a flagless flagpole is what you would have for this design. The problem with this design is the newer equipment, the remote radio heads, the carriers can't put those within these kind of stealth design. It's because of the way that they give off heat, just that's too close an enclosure. There's also the issue that we have to stack the antennas vertically if we do this, so it would necessitate a taller tower. I think all of this stuff regarding alternatives design, I think it's a better discussion to have once we document the visibility of the tower, because if we create a stealth design but it's not visible from any of these areas, then we're doing something that really doesn't have any benefit. But a stealth design is something we can consider. We think personally with this particular location, we got the right location where it's going to be minimally visible to the surrounding areas. Also with the backdrop of having the quarries in the background, I'm not sure how, some of the self-designs like a fire tower or a silo would really fit in with the surrounding uses, but this is something we absolutely can explore and discuss. I think having the balloon test results and having documented visibility of the tower would be better to help color this discussion, though.
Is the height of the tower, like you're saying 150 feet, is that because of the elevation of the camp? Well, it was an old campground and a quarry, so it does go down.
So yeah, it's actually because we're in a valley. So like one of the points for where this tower is being located is we're trying to get coverage right in the bowl or the valley that we're located in. So yeah, the height of the tower is that. But in my experience, 150 feet tall is actually very common. That's actually a standard height for towers. They are sometimes smaller and sometimes taller. But again, the zoning code speaks to a 185-foot tower in this zoning district. So we're still well below that height requirement. But again, topography is what's dictating the height of this tower.
Yep. And I know there in Hyde Park there was one that was proposed. I'm not sure if it was built yet. That was 179.
Yeah, and we have them all around. Especially it really is dictated by the topography and the surrounding areas, the coverage you're trying to achieve in a certain area. With the goal with this site is found a property that's right in the middle that has the need, like right along Route 9. The further away we get from this, then you may be into an area where you do a cell split, where you might have to have two towers, one to the north, one to the south, to get the same amount of coverage into the same area because of the topography. But again, all of this can be more of a discussion we have once you have your RF consultant here.
And then a number of my comments from about midway down page 6 on they start to be, they're tied to the telecommunications regulations, but they're also related to, there were many things I couldn't evaluate because the site plan was just rudimentary, and it didn't have things like contours, et cetera. There need to be more detail to evaluate, you know, how this plays out with the tower. So I'm gonna skip over page 7, I believe, because I think that's,
Yeah, there's a lot of site plan.
yeah, it's a
specific
lot of site
things.
plan stuff, but it is the kind of stuff I want to get right on the table to say, we need this.
No, and we
so can
appreciate
look.
that, and
Yeah.
we'll make, whenever we get to responsive submission, we'll make a full responsive submission to all of these comments.
Yep, okay, and then, let's see, I'm just looking at, EAF comments. I mean, honestly, there are a number of things to address in the EAF to, you know, button this thing up. And the main issue really under seeker, one of the main issues is the visual impact. There are going to be some disturbance issues, but it's a pretty minor area. And what isn't clear is whether or not, just from the retaining wall, the different illustrations there were of the retaining wall in the packet, a couple of the retaining walls look like they were filled with dirt to the top of the wall, but it looks like the plans are saying, we have a site, and the wall is going to go up from there, so that would hide all the equipment on the bottom. So we just need clarification about that.
Yeah, I'll have my engineer confirm and clarify.
And there may be some existing vegetation on the site that could be preserved
They're actually
along the road frontage, I think.
absolutely going to preserve
So-
that, but where the location of where the tower's going, there is no existing vegetation
Right.
on our property, so we won't be doing any tree removal.
Right. Let's see. Oh, I do talk at the top of page 10, number 52, that you do need to go ahead with the submittal to the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation via their Cultural Resource Information System, just to get that done.
So I
So
think
that
we
we
had a
have
SHPO concurrence attached to our EAF. So we have a concurrence of no adverse impact and no direct impact.
Okay, I'll double check for that, I didn't realize
Yeah, it was
that.
an attachment to the EAF, but,
And it was an actual, they said no.
yeah, it's
They said no
the
impact,
SHPO
okay.
concurrence email where it says,
My
yeah, no impact.
apologies.
It's a fairly long application, I'm sure.
Oh, okay, and I guess what I'm saying is whatever was submitted.
We can give you a copy of the SHPO
Yeah,
filing.
I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
the planning board should have it for their record.
Sure.
They should
Since
have-
it's a very voluminous filing, can we just submit one copy rather than the 5 or?
Well, I think probably,
It's gotta be the 5, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
absolutely.
I have to distribute the needs copies.
Trying to save some trees.
I know, I agree.
yep. But all that should be part of the planning board's record.
We can file that.
You know, I understand you got the sign off.
We can provide that.
Okay. And then there are site development plan comments. I don't think anything really stands out. We want to know about lighting ultimately, and what you're going to do about timing of lighting, when is it going to be on?
So generally, just a quick answer, it's a maintenance light only for when workers are on the site in low light conditions. So it's very going to be used, but it'll have an automatic timer on it to make sure when they leave the site, it goes off immediately. But yeah, it's just going to be a maintenance light just for,
Right.
equipment purposes.
Okay. So that will all be spelled out on the plan, so. Those are the big ones I had, Jonathan, in terms of what we need to discuss.
Okay.
If there's anything I didn't hit.
I have a question, Elizabeth. I don't recall the additional observation points that you, the specific points that you added. Did you add one up Carroll Lane to the upper side of Carroll Lane?
We did.
Exactly,
Okay,
I was
'cause that was
gonna-
one of the comments that we
Yeah, we
had.
did.
I was going to suggest the same thing.
Okay.
And the other question I have is the notification, the content of the notification to the 15 days ahead of time to the folks. It seems to me that the content needs to be fairly specific as what we expect to happen and what inputs we expect from the people who are doing the observations. Because it's like, it's difficult. We're going to have a balloon test, right? What is that?
Is there certain colorations of the balloons?
Yeah.
What was that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the comment.
Is there certain colorations of the
Yep.
balloons?
So yeah, we
right.
usually do a bright orange or
That's
bright
right.
red
I wrote
colored
it.
balloon, so it's more visible. Again, it's gonna be about a 4-foot diameter balloon, so it'll be big, bright orange, bright red. The idea will float at the height of the max height of the tower, so if you can see the balloon, you may be able to see the tower. And we do have a balloon test notice that we provided as part of our balloon test methodology letter. It may need to be tweaked based on some of the comments that were made tonight, but absolutely, if we need to clarify the notice, we can add anything in that the board would like.
And Debbie and I were just over here reminiscing that we worked together to put together a notice for Tarpon Towers. So we'll
Yeah.
get that out and,
Website, the newspapers, it all happened.
yep.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
But the upper side of Carroll Lane, we'll add another spot.
But if I may, like to address the question you had regarding what the purpose is for the public and the public notice, it is really to see whether or not, from their own vantage points, whether or not they can see the tower. And the purpose of having the photographs taken from various different vantage points, obviously, is to provide information to the board. But the general public is also, especially those who are receiving notice, have that opportunity during the balloon test to go outside and see whether or not they see it. And eventually there will be a public hearing on this project, but also, of course, the public is able to and has been so far providing correspondence to the board. And so following that balloon test, they're able to do so. The one thing that I would say about the notice, and we've run into this in other towns, is that sometimes it's windy or too windy on the day and so people get a public notice. It should be clear in the public notice that if conditions are such that you can't it's raining or it's windy or whatever, it's foggy out, a number of meteorological impediments, is that there should be like some kind of notice or way that they can check. And one of the things that the town of Fishkill has that's very good is kind of this like public broadcast system where emails go out, and so, it could be the kind of thing where, in addition to like any kind of update on the website or anything like that, the email goes out that says, the balloon test isn't happening today, but it's going to happen on this day as a result.
So we handle that two ways. One is we include at least a first inclement weather date in the notice, so that if the event that the Saturday doesn't work out, we try for that Sunday. I know Liz had a comment about keeping it to Saturdays, so we can discuss that. Our thoughts are, when we're in March and we're doing the test, we really only have so many weekends, so if we add in more Sundays, it gives us more opportunities to get the float. If we just are limited to Saturdays, that really only gives us 5 or 6 opportunities before the leaves come on the trees. But yeah, I think a good game time decision, what we usually do, is about 48 hours in advance of the balloon test, based on the weather predictions at that time. We'll make a game time decision whether or not we can do the float or if it has to be postponed. Then we can get that update to Debbie or to whoever the board wants us to inform. And then from there, we can have an update go on either the town website, the email blast, however the board wants to do a re-notice date update. We can provide that update. My also understanding is the way that the public notice works is the applicant would provide the letters or the envelopes, the addressed envelopes, but it's really the planning board that actually sends out the notices. So we can provide that, and then any additional forms of the email notification, if the board wants to take that, that's fine with us. We want people to be aware of the balloon test. We don't want people to show up at the public hearing and say, oh, we never heard about this. We would like the opportunity for people to participate, whether that be calling, telling people that they can see it, or participate by confirming that they actually can't see it. I've had several sites before where I've had people coming at me and saying, I hate this tower, I don't want to see it from my house, and then we do the balloon test and they confirm they can't see it from the house and they stop showing up to meetings. So that's the hope here is, everybody hears a cell tower and they get a little bit of fear, but if we can document the visibility of the tower, we hope that that's going to put ease at some of those fears.
Do you have a process in place on how to respond to the inputs? So for example, if you get one person that says it's visible, or 10 person, or 50 people, at which point do you change your direction?
So, as far as how we conduct the balloon test, or?
No, as far as the results of the balloon test and the visibility coming in. So presumably, you want it less visible. So if in fact it proves more visible, then what?
So then we have to discuss things like alternative stealth designs to see if you can, mitigate that visibility, if there's things that we can do as far as off-site landscaping that maybe help block the views from certain areas. It really depends on where that visibility is occurring. Like a number of people is something, but if it's a number of people over, a 2-mile area, that's not as concerning as if it's a bunch of people that have a direct view of the tower that's right in the backyard. So it really depends on the type of visibility and, where it's visible from. But yeah, absolutely, that would be something that would affect our application. We would review it, but the towers, unfortunately, aren't invisible yet. So, and it is a line of sight technology, so.
I'm waiting.
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
One day, my job will be much easier, but, so right now, there is
something else. It'll be something else.
There is a limitation where, with a line of sight technology and also having it, just not be invisible yet, there is going to be some degree of visibility. We think, though, here with this particular view shed map shows is that the vast majority of the visibility due to the topography in the area is going to be on that quarry site. So we don't think that the residents of Carroll Lane are actually going to have a direct view of this, nor any other residential properties. So that's really what we're trying to document. If someone working in the quarry can see it, I don't think that's the same level of importance as if residents can see it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this, based on past visual impact studies for cell towers that the board has reviewed, it's really supposed to be as much as possible, a scientifically based study with actual visibility. I mean, that's what this is. It's a visibility study. It's not whether people think it's visible, it's whether it actually is visible. And so if we got 100 people living on Carroll Lane who all said, I think this is going to ruin my property values because it's going to be visible from our homes, and the visual impact study actually documents that, no, that's not the case, we have to take those comments into consideration. But the whole purpose of the visual impact study is to have a scientific, data-based decision-making process.
And if I may, on that point, it's important that this goes to the board's jurisdiction for evaluating significant environmental impacts, as far as visual impacts. And typically those visual impacts are from public view sheds more so than necessarily from private view sheds, but nevertheless it does come into consideration from the board. And I know that the board has received correspondence already, and that there is concern about members of the public as to effect on property values. Unfortunately, like that particular aspect, like a direct effect on property values, is not something that's within the board's jurisdiction. Board cannot, make decisions based on what it anticipates that are going to happen in connection with property values, like as like a specific thing. Like obviously, the board is trying to minimize any environmental impacts to the maximum extent practicable for that overall purpose, but the direct kind of comparison as to this is going to affect my property values is something that by case law is very clear in New York is not something that is allowed to be taken into consideration. I understand that the board is receiving those comments, and I appreciate the concern, but there is some limits as to the board's jurisdiction and review and decision-making process as it relates to that.
So,
and also in regard to the RF consultant that we'll be talking about in a few minutes, that also has to be based on scientific evidence and documentation, which is why we'll need an RF consultant. And although I also appreciate concerns that the public has about health and safety issues, there are certain aspects of these cell towers that have been basically determined by the federal government to be assumed that they are safe unless it can be proven otherwise. And so that's again, that's what is, we're going to look at actual data and evidence, which will be reviewed, which, your team is providing, which our consultant will confirm or, have other comments about it. So, yeah, this has to be as technical a review as possible.
Before we leave the visual, one of the recommendations I want some feedback on is, this is on page 3, and it's item 10, F. And I'm just going to read it. While the normal notification distance, this is according to Chapter 114. Again, I think I'm recommending that we use those procedures. Anyway, while the normal notification distance would be owners abutting within 500 feet, the planning board may wish to consider a somewhat larger distance for this type of project and the project visibility, the potential visibility, such as 1,000 feet, which is 0.19 mile, or 1,500 feet, which is 0.28 miles. So I wanted to touch base on that with the board because...
Well, if we go to the top of Carroll Drive, that's going to be more than 100 feet.
More than 500. It's going to be...
I'm just telling you,
Carroll
I
is
don't
just
know how
about
far it is.
It's about 1,000
About
feet
1,000,
away,
yeah.
but we actually fully support the 1,500-foot notice radius. That actually matches up with what you have in your wireless code for the notice radius.
Okay, good.
So under the Chapter 114, standard is 500 feet, but for a Type 4 application, under 150, 126, we actually have to do 1,500 feet.
Good.
So that'll match up with what we have to do for the hearing
Good.
notice anyway. The only thing we would ask for is, if we set the date and time, the 15 business days, that, again, that's basically 3 weeks, so then we have to turn around that notice really fast and get all of the envelopes if we do that March 8th date. So the 10 business days may be better, especially if we do the 3 different types of notices, which is the mailing notice, the newspaper notice, and posting a sign at the property. I think that's more than enough. This is, again, just a notice that's not required by the code for the balloon test. We'll absolutely do another notice for the actual public hearing, but I think just doing the 10 business days will make it a little easier to get the notice out.
I also believe that the Carroll Drive Association is going to get the notice out to all its members.
Right.
And if I could add, Mr. Chairman, the 10 days will work better as far as publication, because if I don't do 10 with that one paper reuse, I'm going to wind up, it's going to be almost 20 days.
Yeah.
I have to get
Got
it
it.
done first.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
What about social media? Do you put anything out on that?
No, we don't do that, Jody. Not at the town.
Can we put stuff on the website and
I
let
can,
people
that's
know?
absolutely, that's not
Yeah.
social media,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, we recommend posting something on the website, absolutely, because this will be the initial notice. If everything goes well and we don't have a weather problem, then we'll be floating on that first date that's being noticed. But having a notice on the town's website for any further cancellations or any carryover dates, it'd be good to have that continuously updated so that if people are calling and saying, hey, I didn't see the balloon today, we can have some sort of notice to them to let them know about the new date.
You will float a balloon and say, cancel till tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you're having people take official photos and stuff, and are they encouraging for the public or people, say like on Carroll Lane, if to take, everybody's got cameras and stuff like that, are they gonna take those photos?
So, public photos, we don't recommend that because the photos have to be from a specific type of camera so that the photo simulations can actually be accurate. However, what we do recommend is we have a number included in the notice so that if during the balloon test someone says, hey, I can see it from here and this wasn't included as a photo location, we'll have an email and a cell phone number for Debbie or for anyone at the town so that we can send those suggested photo locations to the team in the field and they can take it while they're taking the other one.
Don't do it to Debbie, she's not going to be there Saturday.
They're standing there looking,
You
and
want me here
they
Saturday, I'll come on Saturday.
stand there looking, and they can see, and they stand there and they take their photo. I just thought it was just kind of the same thing, but all right, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just very specific on the type of the camera, the type of lens, just otherwise there won't be accuracy for the photo simulation. Like if they zoom in too much or anything like that, all of that stuff is an issue. They'll probably will take their photos and they probably will show up with their own photos, but the photo simulations and having, if there's a photo they want included in the report, having that communicated to our team in the field, and we'll provide those communication options. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Also, I understand that the balloon testing methodology report by Saratoga Associates did specifically indicate that if during the flying of the balloon, either planning board members or others can notify what's it called, the guy who's out there doing the study.
The photographer, yeah.
Yeah, there was a name that they used in it, which I liked a lot, but I forget what he said. But if that can be relayed, if that information can be relayed to a possible viewing point that wasn't included, but from which somebody actually went and saw the balloon and can relay that to the team, then that could be accommodated by, actual photos being taken from that site as well.
Absolutely, that's what I'm stating. So if there's a spot that we didn't include as a photo location, but it's seen on the day of, we'll have a communication option to send that member of the team out there and then have him take that additional photo. Again, these are where we thought it would be visible. We're adding in the locations that your planner, any additional locations that we're hearing from the board will add in, but I think it's not a one-time only. If you see something on the day of, we'll try to add it in then too. We have up there the photo locations. These were the ones that we just submitted with the methodology letter. So they had a little bit of update. The one big update is we added a couple more along Carroll Lane right there, based on some of the public comments we received.
So while we're talking about photo locations, I had a couple of suggestions. And I went out and drove the area, and it was hard to tell really if some of the spots I'm mentioning would be actual viewing points or not, but I think we should flag them and then have them included in the study. So one is on the lower trail on Bald Hill, west of Route 9, so it's in that Hudson Highland State Park, and there are two shown on the upper trail at Vista Points, but there's a lower trail that still looks like it would be high enough, and if there are any openings on it, that might be an appropriate area to see if a photo can be taken from that lower trail on Bald Hill. There was one photo location shown on the trailer park known as Brookside Senior Park, but I drove through there, and I think there are like 3 roads going into the trailer park, and I think it would probably be good if 2 more appropriate locations within that Brookside Senior Trailer Park could be added. Just 2 more viewing points within the Brookside Senior Trailer Park. Probably, one that would make one on each of the roads going into it.
Do the roads kind of go uphill in that?
Well, the trailer park ends before you get onto the hill, and it's actually fairly level, but then there are connecting roads that go up into the hillside with just some scattered single-family homes up there.
Yep.
I did actually drive up into some of that area, and I could not really see anything looking back, so I was pretty much limiting my suggestion to within the trailer park itself.
Okay, right in the main neighborhood area. Okay.
Yeah. And then I drove down, well, actually, I drove up, one of your suggested additions, Liz, was in Mountain Brook Drive, which I drove up, and you added this one.
Which one are you looking at? Oh, I see.
Mountain Brook Drive, which is your number
D
in number 14.
I see.
And that was a good thing to add that, because I did go up, and although it was difficult to tell what kind of visibility it might have, it is up there, and there are some openings, and there are quite a few very nice single-family homes up there.
Right. And Skyline, it's not clear to me, item C, it's not, there are a lot of homes up there, but it's not clear to me whether or not that's like a private don't go up here road, or if it's a private road, but people can go up it. So that.
Which road you're talking about?
Skyline Drive. It's if you go south along Route 9 and on the west side of the road, it's off of Horseman's Trail. Like if you go from the northern end of Horseman's Trail off of Route 9, it's kind of a pretty immediate turn. And it's in the town of Phillipstown, and it goes up to a high point. So if you're coming from the homes up on top, as you're coming down the road, you're, I believe, getting a pretty amazing view of everything below, valley below, so.
Just want to confirm, this is the Horseman, oh, as soon as this goes.
And you can see it, I can't really see him. Where's Horseman's?
Right here?
Yep.
And this is Skyline up here?
No. Yes, it is, yep.
Okay.
And as it winds down, there are a couple of points where it looks like the topography drops down.
Sure.
I don't know how wooded it is, but I thought it was worth checking out.
Yeah.
Does anybody know anybody like that's been up there, or no? Another important thing, one of the recommendations is the Fresh Air Fund land. I don't know how that's going to pan out, because that is a camp intended for youth. I believe they have trails up there, but they're not, you're not going to see them on any mapping platform, because it's a privately held piece of land, but it's a community piece. Lots of school children go there, and youth. So I don't know how that will pan out, but I think it's worth a try, because there could be some visibility. Because they do hiking as part of what they do.
I'll be up
And
there
you-
tomorrow.
What?
I'll be up there tomorrow.
Will you really? Okay, so you can go take a look.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sounds good.
And so I just had one more that I was going to finish up. So
Go ahead,
one,
sorry.
one additional one is at the south intersection of Old Albany Post Road with Route 9, and that's also down in Putnam County. So again, it's kind of level with Route 9. So I don't know for sure if the tower at that height is going to be visible, but I thought it was a prominent area.
Would it be south of what we're showing on the map? That would extend off the map, correct?
It was...
This
Is that the 1 mile radius?
You have 2 maps.
Yeah, this is 1 mile radius.
I think it was actually within that 1 mile radius.
So this would be the 2 mile radius, but the 1 mile radius is the Google Earth, so it's a little bit easier.
I kind of had to go back and forth because there were other features on the other map, the 2 mile radius map.
Yeah, we have the
that
topography
helped me
rural
find the
layer,
map.
and then, yeah.
Help me find.
But again, we'll add all of these locations. I just wanted to know for the distance, because, again, anything outside of that 1 mile radius is going to be, it's limited visibility, but we
Yeah.
absolutely will document.
I circled it actually on the map that we got, and it looks like it's within the 1 mile radius.
Okay.
And actually, I was having trouble seeing, I'm glad that you have the, what's the neighborhood called? I'm not remembering now. Valhalla? No. The one that's in Phillipstown, it's near the 2 mile radius, and it's an old historic neighborhood.
Yeah, Valhalla Highlands Historic District.
Valhalla Highlands, thank you. Because it doesn't look like it it's in the southern part. Yeah, you just had your arrow there. There you go. It's a historic district. It's an old neighborhood. But it wasn't, it's good that it's on there because it's a historic.
So we have a photo location from there. That was our
Yep.
number 9.
Yep.
But, yeah, so absolutely, whenever there's a historic district anywhere.
You kind of
within
have
2
to
mi-
do it,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Okay, that's what I figured.
So those were my suggestions, and I was going to ask if other planning board members had any additional ones. Kevin, that was good that you caught the additional one on Carroll Lane. I was going to flag that myself.
I just have a comment. It's a cell phone tower.
Yeah.
People are going to see it at some point. They might be walking on a trail, but they are going to see it. He can't make it invisible unless you make David Copperfield up here. Make a whole helicopter disappear.
He'd put me out of business.
We're going to be able to see it a little bit.
Correct. The idea is
That's
where can you see it from?
Exactly.
We think the topography of this area, really what this view shed map is supposed to show, is that blue shaded area is where we expect it to be visible from.
I get
Okay.
it. I totally get it.
No, and so we appreciate the comment, yeah. I can't make it invisible, but,
He can't make it invisible.
Yeah.
It's a cell phone tower. We're going to do the best we can, but it's not going to be invisible.
exactly. And we think we at least found a location where it will be minimally visible.
Well, that was the basis of my my question about process, right?
Yeah.
That's something, what's the result of the scientific data?
So, yeah, they, based on topography, based off of like the line of sight, all of that, that's where they put together, based on a computer algorithm, these viewshed maps, but this is the trust but verify process, so this is what we think the visibility is, but let's actually float the balloon and document.
And I do understand and appreciate what Dominic said about, property values. It stinks, but there's nothing we can do about it. I think the more important thing is, from what I'm hearing and seeing, people are concerned about the health effects. I'm pretty sure if you said to somebody, you're gonna see this, but you know what? It's gonna make you sick, or you're gonna have a problem, you're gonna hear something, you might have a chronic headache. That would be probably more important than I can see it 2 months out of the year.
Yep, and that is a common comment we get for a lot of applications. People are concerned about RF emissions and health. Yeah. So we do submit the FCC compliance report, and we base our reports not on just what we're proposing, but based on a full build-out in case, we're representing Verizon here, but in case T-Mobile were co-locating, AT&T were co-locating, Dish is the new carrier that's coming out, they were also co-located, and then also operating at full power, max capacity. That's what we base our analysis off of, and based on those standards, we're well below the threshold level, what's deemed safe. You can have your RF engineer review it, but generally, sometimes we hear the more RF health concerns are for rooftop facilities, where the actual public is closer to the antenna, and there is less distance for you to have a depreciation of the emission threshold level.
I actually did go into a cell phone tower. It was on the Brewster line. I don't know how tall that was, but when I was driving up the little windy road for the man who was going to let me in, I never noticed it until we got right up on it. Quite honestly, I never noticed it. And I didn't hear anything. But that doesn't mean I neglected to figure out how big that tower was. It could have been 40 feet, it could have been 100 feet, I don't know, but I was there and I actually did go see it.
Yeah, before I got in the business, I never noticed a cell phone tower. Now, because I'm in it, I see them everywhere, but that's because I'm looking for them.
I never noticed it, honestly, I never noticed it.
And it's partly because they are everywhere now.
Well, the cell phones have to work somehow, yeah.
Are the
Amen.
FCC, like whatever said, the reports, because, as you said, the technology is changing, the frequencies are the health reports updated?
So yeah,
the
they've gone back as recently as 2019 to look into how they do it. The short answer is, and I think your RF consultant will probably be better at explaining this, is that even though the technology has changed, the threshold for intense ionizing radiation becomes harmful has not changed. So while the difference is in the calculations for the type of technology, they know where there becomes certain threshold levels where it becomes unsafe. The FCC has made sure that the threshold levels for the general public are well below that standard, and so it's a conservative standard for that. But yes, they do periodically review it. The answer is basically, even though the technology changed, the actual threshold level, so to speak, isn't changed because it's calculated, reduced into, again, we're getting above where I really understand it, but it's calculated into a manner so that that threshold level doesn't change on the technology. So even if I was presenting an older tower or a tower in the future, they'd still have to meet that same threshold level that's deemed safe.
Okay, yeah, all right, so we'll ask our
guys.
I'm just wondering, there's anything's like a safe amount of time you're exposed to something. Like if you're close enough to the tower, not so much that you're out in the road 200, 300, 400 feet away as you're driving by.
So they have two different standards. So one for the general public, and that's based on a continuous exposure level. So that would be you're standing there and you're never going to move away from it. So that's that threshold level, which we do for the general public. They do have a higher threshold level for workers, and that's where it's like an RF engineer who's going up and actually swapping out antennas on a tower. They have a little bit of a higher threshold because they've been trained to operate in these environments, and they also know the things as far as how long they can be in front of an operating antenna at max operations. But that's really more for an occupational worker that's, working on our towers. We do it based on the general population, because that's going to be more for what everybody's concerned about, which is, if I didn't know it was there and it's close enough to my house, is it a safety concern?
Well, the biggest concern I had was just for the guys that were right under that tower.
Yeah, so we have a threshold level for them as well, and it's actually higher than that. But they're also going to be people that work right under the tower, trained on it. But yeah, including the people that work next to it that are on our property, that's going to be included in the threshold analysis as well.
I thought you were talking about, like, is the study real time? Like, the health study, is it from 2014,
No.
15, 19? We're in 2024, so I think that's, I understood it, Bob was asking, is this real time? Like, medical stuff changes all the time.
Right.
Today it's safe, but guess what? 2 years from now, oh, we made a mistake, not safe. That's what happens. That is reality, that is what happens with everything.
Absolutely. So that was.
So I think that's what he's getting at.
That was my first comment, was that they, in 2019, just re-looked at everything to make sure that everything would be.
So 5 years ago.
Correct, 5 years ago, but with relative to these types of technologies, that was still at the beginning of the 5G kind of rollout. That was kind of what created that. There was, for the fact that we're rolling out a new technology, they looked into it, but the FCC has confirmed that these threshold levels are still deemed safe today. So, again, we submit the report. There is law that basically states that the board can't take into account in its decision RF health concerns as long as we show that we meet the FCC standard. I think that was what the chairman was directing earlier, where the federal government has kind of removed this from your review, but we don't like to just say, hey, this is a federal government, you're fully preempted. We do show you the full report. We do the report on a full worst-case scenario, and I think the RF engineer that you retain, he's going to be better able to explain to you if there's anything in the report that he's concerned about. We've submitted tons of these reports. I'm very confident that the report is an overly conservative report and does show that we'll be more than compliant with the FCC standards.
Okay, so do me a favor. Repeat that in layman's terms, because everybody who's out there watching, I'm trying to get the answers for you. Repeat that slowly. We can't do what? I want you to repeat
Sure.
it. I know, but
Absolutely.
I need the people out there to understand too, so tell us again.
Sure, absolutely. So the 1996 Telecommunications Act.
In 1996.
Correct, that's the 1996 Telecommunications Act that set the standard for how local boards, local governments, and state governments can review these types of applications. One of the limitations that's been put on a local board is you cannot take into the basis for your decision whether or not there's RF health concerns. So to the extent that we show that we are compliant with the FCC standard, that's the end of that story. So if the board makes a decision based on RF health concerns and we submit a report showing we're compliant, that is a violation of federal law.
And especially if our RF consultant concurs with your studies.
Correct. That's the point, is we have to show we meet the FCC standard, but a review beyond meeting the FCC standard is preempted.
Yeah, and to the chairman's point, I mean, that's the purpose of getting the RF consultant, is just so that we're not just taking their word for it, we're also having an independent consultant
We're
review.
verifying.
Correct.
Yeah. So we talked about the notification timing and distance for the balloon test. I think agree that 1,500 feet notification is a good measure to use, and 10 business days notice before the balloon test would work better for a number of reasons. Let's talk about the possible dates that CPL recommended. So recommending Saturdays in March 9th, 16th, and 23rd. Then we talked about adding Sundays on those weekends as possible backup dates in case the weather doesn't cooperate. Are we all agreed basically that those are the dates we should focus on and direct the applicant to proceed with those dates?
Yes.
But if we're going to produce a notice, we'll need to sort of figure out.
We'll need a specific
We need the date.
Absolutely.
We need to figure out the date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
tonight, don't we?
So, well, so,
Pretty closely.
Pretty closely.
yeah, I mean, I was going to leave it flexible for the applicant, but why don't we pick a preferred date out of all of those, a preferred weekend? So,
We would like the earliest one, so March 9th.
I like March 16th because I'm away on the 9th.
Okay.
and it would be good for Felix to be able to see it. I mean, and I was going to actually also mention that once the balloon test is up and running, it would be good for as many planning board members to go out and drive the area while the balloon is up as possible.
So if it is March 9th, that means February 24th, you have to give the notice.
I'm sorry?
If it is March 9th, that means you have to give the notice by February 23rd or 24th. That's 2 weeks before.
Exactly. So we've already drafted a notice. It would just be a matter of if Debbie or if anybody who's doing the notice feels that's enough time to get the notice out.
I'm fine with it. I would just like to let Liz, myself, and Dominic take a look at it, the notice.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
make it our own, so to speak.
we can plug in all the details, just need to know
You
which
can
is.
email that to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, March 17th, March 16th, the Sunday would be March 17th.
Yeah. We'll do a green balloon on that day.
Yeah, green balloon.
There's always going to be a date that somebody won't like, but,
Yeah, of course.
well, why don't we go with March 9th, Saturday, with a backup date of Sunday, the 10th? And, you know, if necessary, if there's a total weather blowout for some reason, we'll have to revisit that.
And that would be before our next planning board meeting, so.
That's why I thought that they would work better.
So if something's if that weekend were no good, on
What?
Saturday and Sunday, at least, you know, we'd have the planning board meeting to communicate to the public.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's good.
that Thursday.
That's good.
And the time, I had written in here, 8 AM to 1 PM. I know there was something maybe in the submittal that said 9 AM, but then there was the discussion of, well, what if the thing, whatever, gets hung up on something, and you need some time. So I'm suggesting 8 AM to 1 PM, figuring if there's any issue, that you still have some time to.
We may prefer to do the 9 AM to 2 PM instead.
Okay, 9
just so,
PM,
'cause
okay.
8 AM, they have to do some work to set up the balloon before they go out and.
Got it.
Want to give
Okay.
them some time.
9 AM to 2 PM. Okay, good. Is there any other variable in there that we need to?
The only thing I had a question on is we discussed a newspaper notice and a mailing notice. I know Liz had suggested also signs being posted at the property. We're fine to add that. I just don't know. Again, the purpose of this is to see it from off-site away from the property, but if you want us to add the signs, we can add the notice signs.
Wait, Debbie
I have
has.
to weigh in again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
There
Debbie.
are no signs for balloon tests, so we have to actually have them made.
Well, and that's an interesting question. I mean, some people might be interested in knowing exactly where the site of the tower is. That would be also the case when there's a public hearing actually set on this application.
Right.
But that will truly be a public hearing notice
Right.
sign.
That's covered, it's just that we don't have a specific sign for
But
this.
is it possible to just retrofit one of those existing public
They're
hearing
pre-made?
signs? Yeah, but I mean, can you somehow,
With a big
they have to write the dates in
Personally, it
on.
wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
But the only blanks that are there are the date and the project name.
Mhm.
Everything else says Town of Fishkill, public hearing. Town Hall is the location, so
Right.
you'd have to duct tape the whole sign and rewrite it. It's not gonna work.
But
And you're not volunteering to do it.
Well, spray paint.
Kidding.
But if I may, I mean, to be honest, I mean, the applicant could create a sign.
Sure, absolutely.
You know,
Sure.
that says balloon test, you know, cell tower.
Sure,
like,
absolutely.
Can you take
like
a
other
picture of
things,
the
right.
content?
Yeah.
So-
Let's do that.
Sure, we can do. Would you like more than one sign, or is one sign sufficient?
Just one at the site entrance, I
Okay,
think.
so just,
Just out of curiosity, I mean, why only up to 2 PM? Why not?
So,
You said only 9 AM to 2 PM.
so just again, 9 AM to 2 PM is the time that we need for the float. That's what we feel like we need for getting all of the photo locations documented. Generally, we don't do the floats much longer than 4 or 5 hours. the later the afternoon, usually sometimes the wind starts to pick up in the afternoon.
Balloon
It
starts to
becomes
blow
more
over.
windy in the afternoon. So that's why we also try to focus them more in the morning. But honestly, if the balloon, if we're not done with all of the photo locations, we're going to leave that balloon up until we're done. We just want to make sure the notice is accurate to what the public can expect,
Yeah.
but it may very well end up being up a little bit longer than 2 p.m.
But that 4-hour window should be, oh no, that's a 5-hour window anyway, so that should be more than adequate for the study team to be out there taking all the necessary photographs.
Exactly. We think that's more than sufficient, but we're not going to just, if it turns to 2 p.m., turn into a pumpkin and go away. We're going to finish the whole, documentation.
The last balloon test I remember seeing was Splashdown, when they did their.
Oh, they did one for that?
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, you remember that?
It's a good water slide.
Yeah,
All right,
the
so,
new ride was going to be for how they would see it from below and from development across the way off of Osborne and, yeah.
So I want to make sure we have time to talk about the RF engineer consultants, and we'd like to go into executive session to discuss that. I wanted to just double-check with Dominic to make sure that that is an appropriate thing to do.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between an executive session and an attorney-client session.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
and- yeah.
So, yeah, I actually did check out the open meetings law, and one of the qualifying items in the open meetings law is that we can discuss in an executive session matters leading to the possible appointment or employment of a particular person or corporation. So I'm just wondering if that would qualify in your mind.
Yes, it would, if that's the scope of the discussion, for sure.
Yeah, yep, that would be, because we have, we have 3 prospective RF consultants that have submitted proposals. That came out of a list of 5 potential RF consultants that Dominic had provided us with. So we got responses from 3, those being Cityscape Consultants, Inc., Douglas Fishman, and William Johnson. And all 3 appear to have extensive background and experience working with municipalities in our region on cell tower application reviews. But, the reason basically for going into executive session is just to protect any of the consultants, information that they've been providing us, including their ranges of costs, which we'll be discussing. And what I hope to do is just have a discussion in the executive session and then come back into the open meeting to actually make a decision on hiring one of those. So if that sounds like a good idea, we'd need to get a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the possible hiring of an RF consultant. I'd like to include all of the board's consultants that are here at the table, and the planning board secretary in that executive session. And then we would ask
But we don't need
people.
the applicant, right?
No, we would ask the applicant to leave the room because he'll be present for the open meeting when we come back. We'd ask all the people in the audience to leave the room and also ask the AV
I'll take care of that.
room
Yes,
to
sir.
shut off the tape and audio. So if somebody would like to make a motion to enter executive session, I'd like to hear that.
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Anthony seconds it. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries 7-0. So, all right, we'll just give things a minute to shut things off. And
good?
All set?
Yes, sir.
So we have returned to open meeting. We had a very good discussion. I would like to get right to a motion for the board to consider, which would be something to the effect that based on the board's discussion of the qualifications, experience, and cost of the 3 RF consultants who submitted quotes to the planning board, is there a motion to recommend that the town board approve a contract with Douglas Fishman as the planning board's preferred RF consultant to assist with the review of the proposed Homeland Towers Communications Tower 73 Route 9 application? Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Felix moves that.
Second.
Second.
And let's let Jody second that. Any further discussion?
No.
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? So that motion carries. So let me just mention that the next step will be to forward the board's, this is a recommendation to the supervisor and the town board with the relevant materials submitted by that preferred consultant, who is now Douglas Fishman. The town board's next meeting will be on February 21st with a submission deadline of Wednesday, February 14th. My understanding from Joel Petrus is that the supervisor has indicated that he will be fine with the planning board's preferred RF consultant, and that the supervisor will prepare a resolution approving that RF consultant to assist with the planning board's review for the town board's consideration at the next available meeting, again, hopefully February 21st. So then, once the town board authorizes a contract with that preferred consultant, Debbie would confirm such with the consultant and forward the necessary Homeland Towers application materials, presumably including anything that's been updated, but I don't think there will really be that much updated at that point. Then we'll be basically all set. We'll be, moving ahead independently with the balloon testing and everything else we talked about this evening. So, any questions from you guys?
We would just like to make a request for permission to speak with the board's consultants along the notice for the balloon test and any kind of discussions regarding scheduling and setting up the balloon test. If we can CC Dominic as needed, but that's our request, is that we have permission to discuss with your consultants.
So we would need a motion authorizing the application team, Homeland Towers, to be able to communicate with the planning board's consultants. That's always now, I guess we'll have to make this crystal clear to all that we approve this for, is that anytime an attorney is involved in those kind of communications on one side, the attorney on the other side has to be also involved. So with that caveat, would anyone like to make a motion authorizing that kind of communication?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Felix. Is there a second?
Second.
Bob seconds it. Any further discussion?
Is this on the notice, or is this in general?
Well, in general, but it's
Just the notice.
We would like in general, so we
Yeah,
can
I
discuss.
don't want to have to make.
I just want to be clear, and that way if we
Yeah, I
need
don't want to
more
have to make
comments.
these authorizations every single time we want that kind of communication, but it primarily at this point will be in getting the notifications out and in the way the operation of the balloon test will be conducted.
That'll be our main purpose, and then we do have a couple clarification questions for the planner based on some of our comments in the memo.
Yep. Okay. So we, so we have a motion, second, and a vote 7-0, approving that authorization for communication. The only other thing I was going to mention very quickly is that it still seems premature to discuss the seeker classification and lead agency yet, because we still have all this stuff going on with EAF, revisions, the balloon testing, the visual analysis, which really will in effect become part of the environmental assessment. So we can hold that for another time.
We're absolutely fine with that. Obviously, we want this board to notice its intent for lead agency. I'm not sure if it's already done that. But as far as making a determination, we're fine.
But
they have not circulated for lead agency yet. And I believe, and if I may, according to Liz's memo, there were some corrections in the EAF.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think to the chairman's point, is that the visual impact analysis, would be an addendum to the EAF, and I imagine that you would want to circulate a completed EAF when you do. So I think that the circulation is going to wait until after the balloon test is done and the report is done, so that the other agencies, primarily the Zoning Board of Appeals, which of course will be considering visual impacts for this as well, will have that information at that time.
That seems prudent.
When will the balloon test report?
Could I just finish on the seeker thing? So the only thing I think that CPL did mention is the classification of this as an unlisted action, most likely, but we normally will do that through a motion, and we'll do that at the same time as the lead agency designation request. So it does look like it's going to be an unlisted action, but nonetheless, we'll hold off on making that determination tonight. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but assuming the thing happens on March 9th, so when will the report be out?
It depends. You're generally about 3 weeks to a month. So they're going to have to take all the photos, then they go through the photos, make the photo simulations, and prepare the narrative of the report. And then I assume there's also going to be some communication and coordination with Liz regarding which particular photos should be used as photo simulations, and anything else that she wants included into the final visual resource evaluation report. But generally 3 weeks to a month.
Does that mean you're not coming back to the next meeting? Nothing to do.
So our plan was not to appear at the next meeting. However, I understand that we have the balloon test scheduled for the weekend before. If the board wants us to come back on the 14th,
You're going to give us the results?
No, but I
So what are you doing? You're going to float a balloon to us?
No, I assumed there would only be a requirement to come back if there wasn't a test done on that weekend, if we wanted to discuss the fallover dates. But honestly, I think it would be better for us to come back to this board once we have the full VRA and our responsive submission. But I'm open to whatever the board would prefer.
Well, let me ask, if we get wiped out that weekend, are you going to do it the following weekend?
Correct.
So what difference does it make?
Absolutely agree. I just want to make sure I'm not avoiding any meetings if I'm asked to
We'll
be
just
here.
have-
Be here, he could write a letter to the board.
We'll just
before-
have to make sure the communications, to Debbie's office and presumably with CPL will be ongoing to keep, in that way, keep the board up to date on if there has to be a new date and new notifications.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask a favor, David, if you could email me that notice in a Word format?
Absolutely.
So I can get it out to Liz and Dominic?
We'll get you that tomorrow morning.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I think that will do it for tonight.
Can I make a motion?
Well, we'll get there in a minute. I think we're closing out this item, and I'll let you make that motion momentarily, Fred, as soon as this item is actually over, which it is now.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I was just going to mention that if you haven't heard, the tree preservation law was adopted by the town board at the December 20th meeting. It probably should have been already filed at the New York State Department of State. Anything else that board members or staff would like to bring up?
No.
So the next meeting of the planning board is scheduled for Thursday, March 14th. Deadline for submissions, Wednesday, February 28th. Now, Fred.
I'd like to make a motion that I can go home.
All right. Is there a second?
Yeah, I second it.
I think Felix did. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll just say unanimous.